monkeypox and other public health threats. The changes include internal staffing moves and steps to speed up data releases. Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who is the CDC director, told the agency's staff about the changes Wednesday in a CDC initiative that was not directed by the White House or other administration officials. For 75 years, CDC and public health have been preparing for COVID-19. She said, and in our big moment, our performance did not reliably meet expectations. The Atlanta-based agency, with a budget of $12 billion and more than 11,000 employees, is charged with protecting Americans and then with offshoot branches in different parts of the world, is also supposed to care against public health threats. It's customary for the director to do some reorganizing, but hers comes amid a wider change, or rather a wider demand for change. COVID was their test, and it seems that COVID was their Waterloo as well. There's some changes coming there. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the Africa and the Europe and Asia CDCs as well. That's what's going on with COVID, at least for this morning.
Alrighty. That's good. So we are doing the thing that we always do, which is live streaming this show online on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as on Facebook, SpiceFM KE, on YouTube, SpiceFM KE. Each and every morning we have people who reach out to us and say, good morning, we are tuned in, and this is where we are tuned in from. So tell us where you are this morning. Where are you locked in from? And we will be doing the acknowledgement of your presence shortly. First, we take a look at the weather forecast.
Clear conditions in Nairobi this morning at 13. We'll see highs of 24 and lows of 12. It's mostly cloudy at 15 in Nakuru. 24 will be the high and lows of 13. It's 8 degrees in a cloudy Nyeri, going to highs of 22, and 13 and mostly cloudy in Eldoret with highs of 21. We'll see lows of 12. It's raining this morning in Mombasa at 22. We'll see highs of 28, and 28 will be the high in a rainy Malindi at 23. 19 and raining in Kisumu, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 26 in a mostly cloudy Kakamega. Looking out into Kampala, where the rain is coming down as well this morning at 18. We'll see highs of 25, and 29 will be the high in a mostly clear Dar es Salaam at 21. It's 13 degrees and mostly clear in Johannesburg, highs of 23 and lows of 5 today. Partly cloudy conditions at 23. In Lagos, highs of 29 and lows of 23. At 22, it's cloudy in Kinshasa. It'll go to highs of 31. 26 will be the high in a rainy Beijing going into Wednesday afternoon, and it's 17 and cloudy on a Paris morning, going to highs of 28 today. Looking into the afternoon, it'll be a thunderstorm of a day in London. It's currently cloudy at 18, and they'll see highs of 26. It's still Wednesday night in New York. It's mostly cloudy at 21. Coming into Thursday, New York will see highs of 26 and lows of 19.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
All right,
done
19
right.
minutes after 6.
94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi.
Edwin Eduardo says good morning, and he's tuned in from Mwiki. And he says, good morning, Karibu Sana. Benoit is tuning from Nakuru and says, people are back to work. Everything is peaceful. All right. Jane Jesh is also here with us this morning. Zachary Ondio says, good morning from Kakamega. Patricia Tabia is tuning from Juba. And Imali is where Abdiel Unshur is. Idewa Francis is tuning from Mombasa and says good morning. John Rory also in Mombasa and says good morning. Anthony Mwadilo tuning from County 001. Good morning, Kenya. Jeffrey is tuning from Eldoret. Pressure and pain are my concern. Okay. Let's adjust to them in God. Okay. Biketsi says good morning. He's tuning from Dagoretti. And Newton is in Ruai. Good morning, everybody. Anthony Mwadilo. Vincent Ogutu also tuned in. Diana Mburu says, are we live on YouTube? C'est la question. Are we live on YouTube? Should be. I guess we'll find that out in a minute. Just hang on.
We are.
We are.
Mumbi says we are.
Mumbi says we are. All right. Coming from the house of Mumbi, we are tuned and live on YouTube. Good morning. Tuning from Kisumu, locked into the soap opera that is the presidential elections result declaration keenly. All right. Out at Changamwe is where Mwangi is this morning. Nyamira County, Charles Luanga Ogato is tuned in, and Nyabuto Choki is also tuned in. Kimilili well represented. Amos Freeman says good morning. Ndu CT Muga and Eric Latif. John Amansogole is tuned in. I really love that name. Nanyuki, Bay Ashley tuning from Machakos. We can see you guys all streaming in this morning. Karibuni, and thanks for joining us.
Everybody welcome, City.
Yeah, this is our final proverb from the country of Cameroon. Okay. All right.
Here we go.
On your marks.
Get set.
Get set. Pigeon go. Thing will happen for Coco. Ne ego happen for Kaka. Thing where it happen for Coco, ne ego happen for Kaka.
Ting. Where happen for Coco,
ne ego happen for Kaka. Whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans, that is drying or grinding, to produce breakfast drinks, it will also happen to fresh beans as well.
Yeah.
So cocoa is fresh beans, blah, 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 blah. What?
Cocoa is cocoa, kaka is beans.
Yes.
So whatever happens to cocoa?
Yes.
Happens to beans.
Yes. Essentially, cocoa doesn't just become cocoa. Cocoa is beans first, and then it becomes cocoa. Yes.
So say again, whatever happens?
Ting. Thing where happen for cocoa, ne they go happen for kaka.
The thing where they happen to cocoa, na go happen for kaka.
Yes.
Na go happen for kaka.
Yeah, at December 10 in English.
Whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans will happen to fresh beans as well. Essentially, what goes around comes around.
Whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans will happen to fresh beans
as well.
Which are you talking about the other beans, or are we still on cocoa beans?
Beans.
Or coffee beans?
A bean is a bean. Whether it's a coffee bean, whether it's a tea bean. I'm waiting for corrections.
No, let's go.
Did you
with
say
it.
tea beans?
Aha, good.
Ting, ting.
Tea beans. This is the first time I've heard of those ones. But okay.
And coffee leaves.
I mean, after all,
Which
we're
is
on
what?
the 18th of May. So anything goes.
Whatever happens to cocoa beans is going to happen to
Beans.
beans.
Mm-hmm. Whatever goes around comes around.
Itakuliwa.
If you're a bean, please be knowing you're a bean. Huh?
Okay. That ting is a bit tinging today. Ting, ting.
It's thinging.
Let's look at the newspaper headlines. www.standardmedia.co.ke. Okay, so this is where you get all latest coverage on what's happening around the country and around the world. Well, around the country with all the drama surrounding the election, which is still continuing, and around the world with all the drama surrounding everything else in our lives. Okay? So what's in the front page of the papers.
Front page of the Standard. They wanted to force a runoff, says Chebukati. The IEBC chairperson, Wafula Chebukati, accuses 4 commissioners of impropriety and reveals the difficult choices he had to make towards the end of the polls process, which has prompted him to postpone all pending elections. On the Nation, the IEBC turns into a farce as bosses trade accusations. Dun, 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 dun.
On the Star City?
The Star, Kalonzo, Weta battle for Speaker position. That is the headline.
All right.
Headline of the Business Daily: State agencies in dilemma over Ruto Gachagua assets. Well, KCAA are fretful on legal roles of the presidency. President-elect and deputy fight against asset loss. Case was against them. Now, you're president-elect and vice president-elect. Now, surely, do we continue or do we not continue?
Kutaendaje?
Money on the box.
Mbele iko sawa? Nani anajua? So this story that's making the front pages of the Nation and the Standard. Chebukati, they wanted to force a runoff. Who tell us more about it?
Okay, let me tell you. It's on page 2 of the Standard, and here it is, where it says that rebel commissioners wanted to force a poll rerun, according to Chebukati. Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission Chairman Wafula Chebukati broke his silence and shot back at 4 of his commissioners for rejecting the presidential results, saying they wanted to force an election runoff, or rather rerun. Chebukati said after briefing the 4 on the results he was to announce, they asked him to moderate them so that the country could have a rerun of the presidential election. The chairman had...
rerun or runoff?
The Standard, according to Amos Karevi and Joachim Bwana, have said rerun.
All right.
And the headline says runoff.
Yeah. No, the headline, yes, the headline says runoff. And so now here they're saying election rerun. The sub-headline also says
those two
rerun.
are very different.
They're quite different. A rerun means that before you even announce,
Is
we're gonna
everybody
do it
else
again.
goes back.
Everybody, from MCA to... Huh?
A presidential election rerun is like what happened in 2017. All the candidates again.
Okay,
are
so
on
they
the
wanted to
ballots.
force a rerun, meaning that they would have everybody with under 50%.
That's a runoff.
Yeah.
And then that runoff
in a runoff
is just the two.
It's just the
top,
2.
The top 2.
Yes. In the
A
presidential
rerun
race.
is the 4. Okay. Anyway, continue.
So let's go and see what
Hii ni
we're
mambo ya
seeing
kina
here.
Karidhi vile
Karevi and Bwana are telling us that, according to Chebukati, they wanted to force a rerun. Chebukati said after briefing the 4 on the results he was to announce, they asked him to moderate them so that the country would have a rerun of the presidential election. So there you would have the 4. All right. The IEBC chairman has been under attack from his vice chair, Juliana Cherera, Commissioners Justice Nyangaya and Francis Wanderi, as well as Irene Masit, who accuse him of declaring William Ruto as the duly elected president after keeping them in the dark in the last phase of the rallying, which they said was opaque. In a statement yesterday, Chebukati said contrary to the 4 commissioners' allegations of operating on opaque tallying and verification exercise, he had involved them in the process to a point that they were announcing the results of various constituencies as they were verified. During a briefing held on the 15th of August at around 3 p.m, before the final declaration of the presidential election results, the 4 commissioners, Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, Julius Nyangaya, and Irene Masit, demanded that the chairperson moderates the results for the purpose of forcing an election rerun, contrary to their oath of office. This is according to Chebukati. He refused to yield to this unconstitutional and illegal demand and proceeded to declare the results of the presidential election as received from the polling stations and contained in Form 34A in accordance with the law, according to the statement. The IEBC chairman also indefinitely suspended the Mombasa and Kakamega governor elections, as well as parliamentary elections for Kitui Rural, Kachibela, Pokot South and Rongai, which were scheduled for the 23rd of August. He said he decided to postpone the elections due to harassment, intimidation and threats in the course of the election, which had led to the death of Daniel Musyoka. Excuse me. The returning officer for Embakasi East, who disappeared on the 11th of August, as well as injuring 2 officials, Professor Abdi Gulei and Boya Molu. He said, in view of the prevailing circumstances, the Commission has postponed the by-election slated for the 23rd to a date to be announced through a Gazette notice. So there are many things that were said in this statement that was released yesterday. But the first thing is that it's now everybody's word against the other. And there's no doubt that there was an exchange of words. There was some kind of consultation. But Chebukati is saying one thing. The four commissioners are saying something else. But one thing that we do know for sure is that from this statement, for what Chebukati is citing as intimidation and even murder, that they're not going to go ahead with these other elections that were to take place at constituency level and gubernatorial level.
I don't understand. How are the two related?
The intimidation,
Yes.
and so he's saying that IEBC officials have been held to intimidation, and he cited different examples through that statement of what we saw happening at Bomas, where the CEO and another commissioner were attacked in this melee that took place. He cited different examples around the country of IEBC returning officers being harassed, being bribed, and then he also finally cited this murder of Daniel Musyoka and said, look, there's so much going on right now, and rather than go into further elections, let's just put a hold on everything until we gazette the new date. He says there's too much going on and the IEBC is under siege.
So
IEBC is under siege.
So if you
we
hold
can't-
off the election, then the threats and the intimidation, the bribery will go away.
Yeah.
You'll put in place mechanisms.
You put it maybe a steering committee to look into these issues and how they can be settled, and then now by then
to better safeguard the
to remove the
security
threat
of your officers and the integrity of the exercise.
I thought that these returning officers already had security. I thought that security was one of the features that going into the election had been catered for. Or are we saying that these are new threats and they go beyond the threshold of what was planned for in the beginning?
You see, if the violence has happened and the threats are being reported by the returning officers or the officials in those areas, then you increase the measures. And if you don't feel that you sufficiently address those issues, then you take a break.
The way I understand these things, whenever there are such issues, the first port of call is the security apparatus.
Yes.
And the security apparatus, unless we are saying that the security apparatus have shown themselves incapable of dealing with what have been mentioned as threats and intimidations, so then you pause. But this pause is more of a halt than a pause. The IEBC is a house divided.
Yep.
It is.
Clearly.
It is.
And divided badly.
Yeah. To me, that would be more reason why you're going to hold off, as opposed to this other thing that we're seeing about intimidation and threats. To me, a house divided is the reason why you want to hold on and get your ducks in a row before you go into another election process for these other areas. But this other business of intimidation, it's nothing new.
The worst part, though, is the fact that you're not even putting a new date. If you said we are postponing it by a week,
Exactly.
so everybody is aware. So it's not going to be this Monday. It's going to be the next Monday.
It will be the 30th of August. Okay.
You know, there are candidates, there are agents, there are people who have been working towards this particular election.
Waiting with bated breath for the thing to get over with.
You have seen the impact of what you did by postponing these two elections. Has it had any impact on voter turnout? So what's it likely to have on this particular one? So people are already starting to prepare themselves to go and vote on Monday in these 5 areas. Now you've told them, don't go. Wait, I'll tell you. You don't know when.
You're not saying anything. No, man. Not on as well.
They needed to actually just, if you want to, if you have sufficient grounds, maybe you even had a conversation with the security apparatus and they've told you, we think we need more time, sour. But just say, we are postponing it by X number of days. By the time you come out to announce, just say.
if there's an issue that needs to be, if there's some order that needs to be placed on a situation, and the call for that particular action rests at the doorstep of the security apparatus, as you say correctly, they ought to be able to tell you the sort of time period they need to be able to do that. Because this is an election period. These are things that we need to get over. We need to get them done.
Yep.
Because what was it? Ballot papers that went somewhere else and ballot things that went elsewhere. If we sorted out the matter of Kim's kits that were not functioning, elections took place. Some elections were delayed. They took place. Okay? So,
Nah.
I'm saying it's not adding up.
No, it isn't.
In my mind, this what is being said and what is happening, it's not adding up.
The reasons that are being given for the postponement of the election don't make sense to me.
Let's take a break. It's 25 to 7. How are the roads looking like? So yesterday, people were back to work, but not at 100%.
No, not yet.
So let's see how they'll be turning up today. Let's take a look at the traffic and then continue with look at newspaper headlines. Good morning.
All right, looking at heavy traffic on Jogo Road today, getting into the city. It's going to connect to that roundabout, heading out towards Landis. Something peculiar happened on Haile Selassie because that traffic is unbelievable. It's bumper to bumper, and we're looking at outbound on Haile Selassie, some inbound as you're getting then closer to that Kamkunji roundabout. So that's really crazy today. It's spilling over to Uhuru Highway actually at this point, and in both directions. In the CBDs where you see a lot of action as well. Thika Superhighway, none the wiser. It's moving freely, not an issue here. In and outbound traffic then further ahead on Juja Road as you're trying to then get into the city. It doesn't look too bad coming out of Westlands. James Gishuru, you'll be all right getting onto Wayaki Way without too much of an issue at all. Okay, the Thika Superhighway, like I said, is looking pretty good. So then Kiambu Road as well, flowing really freely. Coming off Mombasa Road, that's all right. Getting off the expressway at around the Imaradaima, okay, slow here and there. And we're looking at North Airport Road, then spilling towards Outer Ring. Outer Ring is looking all right until you get to that Juja Road junction, and then things slow down just a tad. Let's keep an eye on things, see what happens. But for now, in the city is where you see the most of it. Let's talk SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, 23 to 7. So
Mornings
let's look at the
done right.
information of
94.4.
13th Parliament. We already have the numbers, save for one constituency where the result is yet to be declared and 4 where the elections have been postponed. Yes? So we have 285 members elected into the National Assembly. 10 of them are independent MPs. Then the others are distributed thus. Azimio has 140, Kenya Kwanza and its allies 135. UDA are carrying the bulk of the Kenya Kwanza MPs at 116, and ODM carrying the bulk of the Azimio at 70, with Jubilee at 24, Wiper at 20, and the others distributed higher. Now the battle comes into on the control of the House. Okay. Yesterday, the two camps were holding meetings, that's Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, with the elected leadership of, with the elected MPs. Then there was talk of the Kenya Kwanza team reaching out to the some independent candidates and asking them to align themselves with the Kenya Kwanza. Well, not necessarily defecting, because that would then mean that they have lost their seats. But basically, whenever an issue comes up in the House, you will, be voting with us. All right? We're to talk about
Let's just
you know,
agree.
we have a gentleman's agreement here. We are not part of the coalition, but we know that we'll be counting on you and on your support. So those that are that are reportedly said to be leaning towards that kind of gentleman's agreement with Kenya Kwanza are there's the MP for Nambale, the MP for North Imenti, Narok North, Mbere South, Gatundu North, Marakwet West, Lamu Woman Rep, Masiga, and Elgeyo Marakwet Woman Rep. Those are all independents. Those are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 10 independent MPs. If that happens, then that means that without just counting the 5 that have not yet been declared, then Kenya Kwanza would have 135 plus 5, which is 140. They'll be even. 140 Kenya Kwanza, 140 Azimio. Those 5, crucial. Kingmakers. Where are those
Depending on who will
constituencies?
swing.
Where are those constituencies?
Kachiliba,
The
Kacheliba,
ones for which
South
we have not
Pokot
had
South.
elections.
Kitui Rural, Rongai.
Tuiru,
Yes.
and Rongai. Where?
Bum, bum, bum. And we don't know when the election will be. It's another
So
problem.
those two are critical then on if the Kenya Kwanza candidates win in those areas, Kenya Kwanza has a majority.
The majority.
If Azimio wins in those areas, then Azimio gets the majority.
Majority.
But the thing that concerns me, though, about the gubernatorial elections, are we going to retain the polling stations we had when we had the general election? I ask this question because it has a direct impact on the learning of
Yes.
students.
Yes, it does. I believe that yesterday, Professor George Magoha, CS, when he was giving the statement on the portal being open for JSS registration, he said that regardless of what happens, that they're going to request that the IEBC finds alternate stations because they would not want to postpone learning. Secondly, they do not want to alter the school calendar. So he said that specifically. That was one of his points during his press conference. And he said we would really insist that the IEBC make sure that we're not disrupting learning again. Because should that happen, that would mean an alteration of the calendar. And they do not want to do that because we're already trying to get back into the swing of things for 2023.
What happens in by-elections? By-elections happen sometimes in the middle of a school calendar.
Yes.
And we still have the by-elections, and some of them happen in the learning institutions. So by-elections happen on sometimes weekdays, sometimes Saturdays.
Weekends.
So I think they could just hold them like it's the by-elections and work with managing the polling stations. Maybe the issue would be if they need to seek new polling stations, they
Then
would
they're
have
going
now
to
to
do that.
to
because-
gazette the polling stations and all.
Well, this is the task they have at hand. Because they can choose the day.
They
Yes.
literally can.
Yes.
Yes, they can choose the day because choosing a day would also indicate clearly how much disruption or an absence of the disruption will be dealt with. So the planning and the organization is actually in their hands.
Yes.
It
Oh.
is.
Now that you're talking about schools reopening, tell us about that story, maybe.
Well, this one is, I was really looking at this story, in, it's in The Nation, really. It's by Winnie Atieno and Faria Hussein. Well, they were talking about how voters in Mombasa and Kakamega counties will have to wait longer to vote for their presidential preferred governor candidates after the Electoral Commission yesterday postponed elections that were scheduled for next Tuesday. Okay? Now, I'm going to fast forward this thing, and I'm going to say this. The Education Secretary, Magoha, said schools will not close again because of elections, right? We are working with the IEBC to ensure that the school calendar will not be disrupted next week. Schools resume tomorrow, which is today. If there is going to be an election soon after thorough consultation, the government will pronounce itself about our children, and the most important thing we shall consider is the safety, Professor Magoha said. The CS added that they have asked IEBC to transfer their constituency tallying centers in the counties from primary and secondary schools to other institutions such as universities, colleges, to avoid disrupting schools. Leading Mombasa governorship candidates, Abdul Samad Nasser of ODM and Hassan Omar of the UDA had yesterday said they were ready for the polls and asked their supporters to turn up in large numbers. Other candidates include former Nyali MP, Mr. Hezron Awiti, Mombasa Deputy Governor William Kingi, Daniel Kitsao, and Shafi Makazi, and Said Abdallah. Right.
They'll wait longer.
They'll wait longer, but even the people who are in charge of IEBC in Mombasa, for instance, are quoted as saying that they were ready for the elections. So, again, these are matters that are internal and these are matters of IEBC. We wait for guidance from them.
Yep.
They are the Constitutional Commission mandated to manage elections.
So we will wait for them to give us directions as to how
okay.
to go about this thing.
Okay.
It's back to expensive unga. I don't know that we ever left, but all right. The government has ended the subsidy scheme. Excuse me, please. I have a question even before I read the story.
Yes, please.
Did it ever start?
What?
The subsidy scheme?
Yes.
Okay, so
The government announced the start of the subsidy scheme.
did we see any impact?
Yeah, impact, yes.
Those two are not related.
Oh, sorry.
You're asking whether the government started a subsidy scheme that is now coming to an end?
No. That is question 1A. And then there's question 1B. Yes. So they're all one. Okay. The government definitely started the scheme. I know because I witnessed, not I was told, queues waiting for that unga.
For the unga to come.
Yes, and I also know that if you're willing to pay the 180 shillings, you would have the unga for the 180 shillings unga. Okay? Not I was told. Okay?
You witnessed queues.
Queues.
Did you witness people actually walking out to the 100 babunga?
Yes.
Okay.
I waited. I wanted to see this thing because I talked to the people and they said, because I wondered. I went to the supermarket with 2 or 3 people.
Did it have a special badge like government?
Like
something?
like the one you see ration?
No. I did not wait to see that. I just saw the queues. I got in the supermarket, got out, the queues were longer. There were 3-4 people. When I came, it was now really long. So I said,
So 100 shillings unga was available on the
it
shelf.
was available. I said this was worth waiting because I had a conversation. I talked to the watchman,
With your
then I
guy
talked
at
to
the
people of the
supermarket.
yes, and I listened.
Okay.
So I watched.
So the 100 bob was available and the 180 bob was available.
Yes.
The 200 bob.
Yes,
was
if you want to buy the 200 bob, you could buy.
It's there on the shelf.
Right
You
now?
could buy. No, I don't. This is history.
Oh,
It was a while back.
Was it on the shelf?
Yeah. Eric, that's where you
Expect to see like a back room somewhere.
I'm wondering. So how do you distinguish between them?
So is it
If it doesn't have, this one doesn't have a GOK badge, how do you know this is the one?
Remember,
100
I
bob
did
and this
not
is-
say. I simply said I didn't see the unga with any special whatever. I just saw people walking out with a lot of unga.
Okay, so
Yes.
tell me how the aisle was looking. Was there a section that is marked 100?
No,
unga?
I did no.
And this
I
section
no,
is
I
marked
did. I did
257
not.
unga.
I did not see a special section set of in the supermarket I was in. I did not. I just saw things as they have been whenever I go to that supermarket.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. See, let me read you the story.
Continue now. So the thing has ended.
It has ended.
Okay.
Faster than you can say Jack Robinson. Kenyans return to the harsh reality of expensive maize flour starting today as the government's subsidy scheme ends. 28 days is over. The Ministry of Agriculture has informed millers participating in the program of termination of their contracts to supply subsidized sifted maize flour for a 4-week run. According to the Crop Development and Agricultural Research Principal Secretary Francis Owino, this is to remind you that your contract for the sifted maize flour subsidy program lapses on Thursday, August 18th, 2022. The PS's office yesterday said there were no plans to extend the subsidy. That which you have enjoyed will no longer be returning. We have processed invoices worth 4 billion shillings that was put in the subsidies escrow account and made requests for additional funds to Treasury should the remaining invoices exceed the 4 billion shillings. The subsidy, however, ends having failed to achieve its objective of ensuring that vulnerable households in the country access cheap maize flour due to blunders made during formulation of the contract, including limiting supplies to sifted maize flour only and leaving out unrefined maize flour, which is largely consumed by the poor, as well as the ministry's decision to lock out over 100 millers from the program. You see the problems? Yesterday, some of the millers indicated that the cost of maize flour would continue being high since they were still facing a shortage of maize in the country and buying from some neighboring countries, with maize prices still remaining around where they were when the subsidy was introduced. So they're basically saying, yeah,
Blah, blah, blah.
nothing has changed. Yeah, we're still where we were 28 days ago. So yeah, cheers. We're buying maize at between 5,600 and 5,900 for a 90 kilo bag in Narok, and Tanzania is not supplying to us. Based on recent movements, there are indications of a further rise in maize prices soon. This is according to Kipnetich Mutai, who is the Grain Belt Millers Association chairman. Yesterday, shops were still experiencing the maize flour shortage challenges at some 3 supermarkets in downtown Nairobi. They were only selling premium maize flour brands that were not subsidized, with the cheaper maize missing from the shelves.
So the cheaper one was a different brand.
So it would seem now that this, because I never saw with these eyes.
How did this free unga look like? Does anyone have a photo?
I never
Please
saw
post on
how the free
SpiceFM
unga
KE.
look like, because the ones that you used to buying, right, is what they're calling premium brands, and those guys never sold at 100 shillings.
Did you buy the 100 bob unga? How? Just take us through that experience. How was it looking like? If you have a photo of the
The
packet
unga
of
that you
unga,
bought.
please share it with us. City, what is on the Business Daily or anything? An interesting story that you're looking at.
Well, the interesting story can
Okay.
wait for another day.
Okay.
Let me tell you a story.
Story.
A happy story, yo.
Happy story.
Kenya investors reluctant to lend government billions. This is a story in the Business Daily.
Okay.
Investors are unwilling to lend government billions of shillings in a push for higher interest rates, signaling a funding headache that awaits the incoming administration. The August Treasury bond sale fell 11.5 billion below target as investors demanded higher rates that forced the Central Bank of Kenya to leave bids on the table. Government selling bond at a certain interest rate.
People say,
Abana, Nani, if you want us to buy this bond, you have to pay us a little more. Bidders offered a total of 49.1 billion in the bond sale that targeted 50 billion, out of which CBK accepted 38.5 billion. You know, I'm going to stop reading.
don't stop reading, City.
All right.
Reading is important.
The 3-tranche bond consisted of a 3-year security, a 10-year offer, another facility for 20 years. Investors demand on average 12.45% from the 3-year paper, but the CBK was willing to pay a return of 11.8%. They demanded 13.9% against the return to 12.3%, while on the 20-year they sought 14.2% versus a coupon of 13.4%.
Okay. So you can stop reading now.
Yeah.
All right, we get it. Sawa.
So it's not that they are reluctant. No. It's that they're arm twisting.
It's just, yes, that's it. It's a market playing the market games.
Yeah, they're arm twisting. It's not anything to do with anything. It has to do
The
with
market senses that
These guys are vulnerable.
These guys are vulnerable, so the market is trying to push the envelope a little bit.
And the envelope seems ready to be pushed.
Yes.
So they're trying to push it.
Envelope haina budi ila kukubali. Yeah.
You know, there's something that I will want us to ask the Honorable Joseph Were. Something that I found puzzling. It's on page 14 of the Standard. Very, very strange.
Yes.
In my mind as a lay person, when the Supreme Court makes a ruling, that's it. In my mind. Yani, done. Then my mind was thrown into turmoil completely. When I read, judge quashes rules gagging views on cases as Azimio petition looms. Now, what the judge quashed was a Supreme Court ruling. So I'm thinking, okay.
It wasn't a ruling. It was new rules developed by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
On how you conduct yourself when you come before us.
For me, ruling, anything that comes from the court.
Court. Quisha.
Ruling.
According to them, they said this is how we're going to conduct ourselves during these presidential petitions.
Yes.
So now court comes and says, okay, that's nice, but no.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You see, as far as I'm concerned,
read the story.
It is ruling. Okay? See, the court has said.
Quisha.
It's a ruling. Huh?
And the Supreme Court is the highest court.
Yes.
And
It starts by saying the court accused of surpassing its powers as it did not seek Parliament's approval. Rules seemed to be regular and had unjustifiably limited the rights to free speech. My mind is complaining. Lawyers and litigants can now freely discuss the active presidential petition in the Supreme Court after the High Court in Nairobi quashed rules by the Apex Court in May. This means that should Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Coalition Party, challenge election results at the Supreme Court, parties to the suit will be free to discuss and even speculate on the outcome of the case. Right. Justice Mugure Thande, in her judgment, yesterday found the regulations gazetted by the country's top court amounted to limiting freedoms of expression without public participation and the involvement of Parliament. You can see my confusion. The regulations were put in place following Twitter discussions on which side of the Supreme Court judges would lean during the Building Bridges Initiative case. They read that upon commencement of the hearing of the petition by the court, litigants, their advocates, and advocates' agents shall refrain from expressing their opinions on merit, demerit, or predict the outcome of the petition in any manner that would prejudice or impede the court proceedings until judgment is delivered. Meaning, if it's in court, everybody shut up. Judge comes, Justice Mugure Thande comes and says, everybody don't shut up. Everybody talk and speak your mind.
As you want.
Yes, even decide who you think is going to win. Make it like a football match and you can decide, okay, so my team is going to win as opposed to the other team.
Remember, in the BBI ruling at the end, when the Chief Justice Martha Koome read the final decision of the court,
yes,
she then ended with that comment and cited particularly Amenasir Abdullahi and Nelson Harvey, and there was another lawyer. What's her name? And she said these particular advocates were posting on social media, their opinions on how judges will rule. And this is wrong.
They were an alternate Supreme Court.
Yeah, it appears to be like trying to arm twist the judges to rule a certain way, or by creating a certain public perception of the judges beforehand. And that's why after that she came up with these rules and said, as the president of the Supreme Court, this is how we conduct ourselves in these rules. This particular judge, the matter was taken to court by people including Charles Kanjama, and then this judge says it's only Parliament that has the power to make provision that has the force of law. If you wanted to come up with these regulations and they are so strong, they needed to take it to Parliament so that then Parliament discusses and amends that as subsidiary legislation to whatever, the Supreme Court Act or whatever, and then comes into force. Otherwise...
Because when you talk about the three arms of government, the arm that has the mandate
to make laws
is this other one. It's called
Parliament.
Yeah, that's one. So, my confusion is supreme.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You're of supreme
It's a big
confusion.
one.
Yes.
There's an interesting story
Go
on
ahead.
page 20 of The Nation. If you look at it, you'll find it. And as you look at that one, there's also an equally interesting... It's about MCAs.
Yes,
Yesterday's and stories and today's stories.
You like that story?
I like that story of an MCA who's been elected again and again and again and again and again for 4 terms. As you look for that one, let me tell you about this one.
But go ahead.
71-year-old man has beat several young candidates to clinch a seat in the Nandi County Assembly. Raymond Chelulei won the Singor Soba ward seat after a grueling battle against his opponents, some of whom were campaigning online. 71-year-old campaigned, won that seat. This other one is in Nyandarua.
Beloved MCA defies UDA wave, wins on Jubilee ticket when other members of the Nyanjara County Assembly defected en masse to UDA to defend their seats. This particular MCA, James Kiru Gashomba, stood his ground. He remained in Jubilee and eventually won the election to represent the ward for the 4th time, making him the longest-serving ward rep in the county. But it's not the first time Mr. Gashomba, a father of 3, has survived political turmoil in an election. The latest assembly has shown him a confident and smart politician.
4 times. Go to UDA, stay in Jubilee. The people of Jabine say, this is our man. And the people of Singor in a ward have also said, this 71-year-old man
is our man.
Say what Interesting stories. Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. Good morning, 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Oseto. The controversy surrounding the 2022 presidential election results has taken a new twist, with the Electoral Commission IEBC chairperson Ofula Chebukati now stating that the 4 commissioners who disowned the final results wanted to force an election rerun. In a statement, Chebukati dismissed claims by IEBC Vice Chairperson Juliana Cherera, Commissioners Francis Wanderi, Justice Nyang'aya and Irene Masit that he denied them access to the portal back end where the final tally was being conducted. Chebukati maintains that the 4 commissioners had access to all the results and were involved in all activities of verification and tallying of the presidential election votes where William Ruto was declared the winner. Chebukati further states that he refused to give in to pressure from the 4 IEBC commissioners since their alleged intention was illegal and unconstitutional. On the issue of declaration of the results, Chebukati maintains that as the chairperson of the commission, the pronouncement of the presidential election results is his constitutional responsibility, hence dismissing claims that the other commissioners needed to be present during the announcement. Chebukati called for the arrest of individuals who assaulted officials at the Bomas of Kenya moments before the declaration of final presidential results. Meanwhile, IEBC has yet again postponed the gubernatorial elections in Mombasa and Kakamega counties indefinitely. In a statement, Ofula Chebukati said that this is after election officials were allegedly threatened. Chebukati has also asked the security operators to arrest, prosecute those who involved in the chaos witnessed at Bomas. Elections in Kitui Rural, Kachaliba, Pokot South and Rongai constituencies have also been postponed. Elections in Nyaki Ward in Meru County and Kwanjenge and Embakasi East in Nairobi have also been affected. The election was scheduled to take place Tuesday next week. Now, religious leaders in the country have expressed concern over what they term as divisions within the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission following Monday's declaration of final presidential results. Speaking in Nairobi, the religious leaders from 9 different denominations warned that the division within the electoral agency threatens the country's peace and stability. To address the differences, the interdenominational community drawn from the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, National Council of Churches of Kenya and Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims said they had commenced efforts to resolve the differences between the commissioners.
We have consistently said that if there is any disagreement in the matter to do with elections in this country, our constitution and our laws have provided channels through which one can pursue their grievances. We already met with the deputy president, who is now president-elect, in terms of engaging with him just to hear his thoughts on how is he going to bring and promote peace and cohesion in our country that is obviously divided 50-50 if the election results are to be understood.
And President-elect William Ruto has told public servants to keep off politics and carry out their roles as stipulated by the law. Speaking during his first meeting with the Kenya Kwanza Alliance elected leaders at his current residence in Nairobi, Ruto termed public servants' involvement in politics as unprofessional and abuse of office. The president-elect said that under his administration, public servants will be expected to focus on their offices and leave politics to political players.
I am asking all public servants who have been forced to take political positions in the just concluded elections to step back and be professional public servants, to carry out their mandate professionally and serve all Kenyans equally.
And the Mani National Party has nominated its party leader Musalia Mudavadi for the appointment as the Prime Cabinet Secretary in a special meeting by the party's Council Bureau. The council unanimously nominated Mudavadi for the position. The new position, to be created through an executive order, was agreed upon by the founding party members of the Kenya Kwanza in an agreement signed by President-elect William Ruto of UDA, Moses Wetangula of Ford Kenya, and Musalia Mudavadi of ANC. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Spice FM. Nakuru.
Okay, question as to what exactly is going on Haile Selassie today is still looming. Not quite sure what's causing that. There's heavy traffic on Jogo Road. There's heavier traffic on Lunga Lunga in and outbound. And then this is spilling over to Landis, which then inbound to the city is absolutely crazy. And we're looking at in and outbound traffic on Haile Selassie spilling over from Gong Road and then well into the CBD. Something happened, and it happened early, because now we're seeing that movement and it's not letting up, at least not for now. If you're getting into the CBD, you might want to think about using an alternate route, because you will be stuck on Haile Selassie. We're also seeing traffic then going towards Muranga Road, and this is coming from the Pangani underpass. A little bit of traffic on the Thika Superhighway, but nothing too worrisome, at least not for now. Outer Ring is spilling some traffic over onto the Thika Superhighway. Coming out of Western, doesn't look too bad. You should be all right coming off James Gishuru onto Waiaki Way. Apart from that, it looks all right. Ring Road Western's then spilling over from Oloitoktok all the way into Kileleshwa. That is fine as well. Let's keep an eye on things, but into the CBD is thumping with traffic this morning. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let's know what's going on where you are and try to keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
7:07
not down.
on the 18th day of
This
August
is the Situation
2022.
Room,
Welcome
the
to the
only
second
way
hour of
to
Kenya's
start
biggest
your day.
conversation. This is the Situation Room. We are on Spice FM, and we are also live streaming the show on audiovisual online, www.spicefm.co.ke. You can follow our conversations on Facebook and YouTube, Spice FM KE, also on Twitter at SpiceFMKE. Today is Thursday. Hashtag Justice Thursdays is back. We want to talk about the role of the judiciary in the assumption of office. We have a guest in the studio. Before we welcome him and introduce him to the show, let us hear the day's proverb, City.
Right. This is our final proverb from Cameroon.
Right.
This is my attempt at speaking pidgin. I want to predict before I even start that I will fail in my attempt, but nonetheless, I will forge
Don't
on.
pigeonhole yourself.
I have to pigeonhole myself.
Okay.
Ting! That's the first word. Ting where a happen for Coco, ne ego happen for Kaka. Do give life to this thing?
thing where they happen for cocoa, nai go happen for kaka.
Right. Hey, whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans will happen to fresh beans as well. Meaning, whatever goes around comes round.
I hear the I'm just not getting the going around, coming around beats.
Give it time.
It'll come around.
Give it time.
It'll
It'll
come
come around. Give it time. Give it
Now
time.
that it has gone.
As they say, pole.
Aye.
So come around.
So which beans are we talking? We're talking about fresh cocoa beans first, and then it'll also happen to any other beans.
Yes. Fresh cocoa
So how
beans
is that going
rarely
around, going
remain
around?
just fresh cocoa beans. Just like coffee beans don't just remain coffee beans. They go through a process of drying, sometimes grinding, and then they are used for something else. So it's a process. Okay? So if it's cocoa beans, they go through that process. If it's some other beans, like coffee beans, kaka, or as I said, tea.
Yes. There's a new species this morning, but it's okay.
The drying and the grinding takes place. Yes.
Okay. Whatever happens to one happens to the other.
Yes, it does.
All right. The Honorable Joseph Were is from the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, and he's here with us in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much.
Make yourself comfortable in the hot seat of
Thank
the
you.
Situation Room.
I hope I won't sweat.
No, it's good to sweat. Sweat is actually healthy.
It's a good thing.
It's a
I
good
see.
thing, you know.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Were, you are from the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary.
That's true.
You are not the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary.
I am not the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, not even the Deputy.
It's not even the Deputy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how many people then are in the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary? Let's start with this Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. For people who know that, well, there's a Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, there is the Chief Justice, there are other registrars of the various courts. There's one now who's telling us where to apply if we want to petition the presidential election.
That's
the
true.
Registrar of the Supreme Court. So tell us this one, the CRJ. What's its office?
Now, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary is the accounting officer of the Judiciary, and he's like the PS. We have PS in the ministries, and all issues in terms of management and oversight, day-to-day oversight, fall under that office, are currently occupied by Madam Anna Madi. And all registrars report administratively to her. Each registrar is in charge of a court. We have a registrar in charge of the Supreme Court. We have a registrar in charge of the Court of Appeal. We have a registrar in charge of the High Court and the Employment and Labor Relations Court and the Environment and Land Court. We have a registrar in charge of the Magistrates Court. We have a registrar in charge of the tribunals. We have a registrar currently also in charge of the Kenya Judiciary Academy. We have a registrar in charge of the small claims courts. And recently also we have a registrar, though acting, in charge of court-annexed mediation. So they all report administratively to the chief registrar. She's also assisted by directors. We have directors in the various directorates in charge of various functions, the HR, supply chain, we have ICT, we have a new one which is coming up called security and administrative services, among others. So administratively, they all report to her. But in addition to that, the registrars also report to their respective, what I would call presidents or presiding judges of the various courts on some of the day-to-day aspects of their courts in terms of ensuring that their courts are effective and are able to discharge their mandate sufficiently. Thank you.
So what do you do there? You as well.
I do many things. Principally, I'm a magistrate,
Right.
but currently undertaking administrative responsibilities. Basically, I help the chief registrar in the day-to-day management of her office because she's not able to every day wake up and find out who has a pen and who doesn't have a pen, who has paper. And basically, I help her in day-to-day running of her office. I also help her in coordinating her office and the issues that come from the registrars and the directorates on a day-to-day basis, the routine issues that do not require her to look at, those that already have regulations and mechanisms of handling, including giving back information, facilitating them, and basically ensure that every registry and directorate is able to function effectively. I also currently help in legal issues in that office, being able to ensure that we are compliant with our various requirements, statutory or otherwise. I also look at matters that come against the judiciary, so that I'm able to advise the chief registrar on the best way to handle those matters, whether we need to engage, whether we need to defend, whether we need to file, and just engaging with the lawyers also that represent us, and that includes the Honorable, the Attorney General.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds to me like the chief of staff in the office of the chief registrar.
More like what we'd call a de facto chief of staff, not a de jure chief of staff. Yes. I hope I've not lost you.
It will come round.
We only know de facto one party state.
De facto basically says that you're performing the functions, but not with the title.
Okay.
Yes.
And the other one is when you have the title.
When you have the title.
Okay.
Yes.
And therefore the money.
yes, you're right.
This office has a big role that it plays in succession, especially of the office of the president.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have seen in 2013, we saw the then Chief Registrar of the Judiciary being the one who asks the incoming president to repeat after her.
Yes.
We saw the same in 2017. The incoming president being told to repeat, say what I say, don't say what you think.
Yes.
And even what I say is not what I'm just coming up with, it's what's contained in the law.
Yes.
So what is this role of the office of the Chief Registrar in the assumption of office of a new president?
Now, the Chief Registrar, by law, is required to assist the Chief Justice, before whom the President-elect takes the oath. The law provides that a new president, or even an acting president, for that matter, if there's to be one, would require to take an oath of office before assuming the responsibilities of that office. Actually, the president will take two oaths. There is one oath which you call the oath of allegiance. The second oath is the one of the due execution of the functions of the office of president. And therefore, the chief registrar, what you see the chief registrar doing on that stage is the culmination of a lot of processes. Because the process begins, like we've seen recently, with the setting in of the elections. And once the electoral body announces, then what we call the assumption of office of president committee, the one that's currently chaired by the head of public service, then effectively begins its work to prepare for the coming in of a new president. In our case now, because we are certain that it's going to be a new president, it's not because we don't have a president who was being re-elected, then necessarily there's going to be a transition. So that calls for a number of things. One, the chief registrar sits in that committee, in that national committee, that then prepares for that transition. They, among other things, have to ensure that the incoming president is well briefed. And but now the part that concerns the judiciary principally is to prepare for this swearing in. Without the swearing in, there's no president, basically. You will have a president-elect without the swearing in. So the purpose then, rather the point at which the chief registrar and especially the judiciary comes in, is to prepare for this part that is the swearing in, ensuring that the instruments of that oath are prepared, ensuring that they coordinate with the national committee in terms of what will be the venue, that the legal aspects are taken into account, that there's actually a gazette notice issued to that effect. There is a communication from the chair of the IEBC to the Chief Justice to confirm that it is this person and the running mate who have actually won this election. Of course, that is barring any other aspects, legal aspects or challenges once all those have been concluded. And then also ensuring that the incoming president or president-elect and deputy properly briefed on in terms of the process of taking the oath, and then ensuring that on the day of the swearing in, the oaths actually are taken within the timelines provided in law, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Yes.
It's very interesting that you say this because, I mean, we've seen, multiple oaths of office then being taken, and not just in Kenya, but around the world.
Yes.
And then, would have been none the wiser because you don't realize that there's an entire process that goes into, but all we see is on the day, and then your hands are on the holy book, and then you continue like that.
Yes.
So, but I mean, getting to now see behind the scenes and know then what really happens is important. So, is it then these processes that you speak of, the gazettement, the understanding, the briefings to the individuals then who would swear at any given time? Why is it then that it is absolutely important for these things to happen before just, after all, you've gone through an election, it's said that you've won, you go, you swear, you take the oath, right? You have this ceremony. Why is it important for all these back end things to happen as opposed to, okay, you do your job and I'll know what I need to do and then I go in and why is it important for these processes to then take place?
Thank you. The swearing in of a president especially, and it also to an extent flows down to the governors, is actually a very solemn occasion. It's actually a judicial occasion, and that's why it's done in the presence of the Chief Justice. Now, we, as the judiciary, we are not, so to speak, in charge of the president-elect or the deputy president-elect, and therefore you need a lot of coordination with the other agencies to ensure that, number one, there is proper communication with the incoming president and deputy president. You want to ensure that the provisions that relate to the Constitution and the assumption of the Office of the President Act are also adhered to, because it would be very embarrassing, for example, if the Chief Justice were to swear in the president, and then it turns out it was done wrongly, and then it brings in a lot of what I would call a lacuna. So, will the president be president or not president?
Because the process was not followed.
Because the process was not followed. And then I don't think any country wants to be in that place. Because unlike now, when we have the president, the outgoing president, still president, although with reduced powers, there is a president. What happens if the president purports to have handed over and yet not handed over? Then we have a serious constitutional crisis.
What happens in that case? When is there a ceremony? Or is it just an assumption that the current president then hands over to the president-elect? Is there something that happens? Instruments of power then released from one to another, or does that happen behind the scenes that nobody's really aware of?
The most important aspects happen in public.
Okay.
And there are mainly two, and that is where the judiciary is involved in one of them. Where the judiciary is involved is in terms of ensuring that, number one, the oath is prepared according to the Constitution. Because we are not just making up our own words. It's not like you can decide to say, I do in a different way. There's only one way you can take the oath, and you have to take both oaths. And then the president also signs the certificate of inauguration, which is provided for under the Act.
Which president?
The incoming president.
The one who's swearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then for a transition, there are two important instruments that must be passed on, the sword and the Constitution. But that is now done outside the judiciary. It's done by the outgoing president, assuming that the outgoing president is present. Yes, because it's not in every situation of a transition where the outgoing president could be present. It happens for us because there was an election. The question would be, what if there was no election?
Yeah.
If it was out of date, for example. Of course, we'd have an acting president, and then the process of transition would set in. So The instruments that are passed on to the incoming president are basically the sword and the constitution.
So if there was no president to hand over, what happens? So let's assume that this president is taking the oath of office, but the predecessor is not present. So who hands over the constitution to the incoming president? Who hands over the sword to the incoming president?
Two things would happen. In a practical sense, under our new constitution, unlike under the old constitution, there would always be a president. Because
there'll be an acting,
it provides that
acting in that office.
Acting if the president is only incapacitated. But if the president is not incapacitated and has not left office, even in a transition, he remains president. In terms of the handing over of the instruments, if for any reason he would not be present, number one, it would not invalidate the oath that the president has taken, because that is what makes the incoming president. The instruments would then have to be handed over probably in a different fora, because the outgoing president under the law is supposed to be the custodian of the sword.
These two instruments, yes.
You can give the constitution because there's always a constitution. But in terms of the sword, it's presumed that the outgoing president is the custodian, unless for any reason he has handed it over to one of his officers to ensure that there's a transition.
Maybe my mind was elsewhere when you were saying it.
Yes.
What exactly is the relevance of this oath?
This oath actually is provided for under Article 74 of the Constitution.
Which says?
And it doesn't just provide for the president, but for every state officer. That before assuming office, every state officer shall take an oath to symbolize that assumption.
Just symbolize.
Yes, but without it, you cannot assume the powers of that office.
All right. So is the oath legally binding?
It is legally binding.
Meaning the things you utter, I, so and so,
yes,
this, and the other, this,
yes,
this, and the other.
Yes.
Is it actionable? Meaning, if at some point in the history of your tenure as a state officer, there are things that could be summed up as not as being you are not keeping in tandem with the oath that you swore by law, are they actionable?
Absolutely. If you look at the aspects that deal with the impeachment of the president, that can be one of the bases. Because when the president is taking the oath, the two oaths, they both refer to compliance and upholding and protecting the Constitution, and ensuring justice for all, and ensuring that he or she will undertake their responsibilities without fear, favor, ill will. It also expects that president to be patriotic to the extent that, and that's why they take the first oath of allegiance, that they will not sabotage anything that would affect the security of this country. So if there is evidence, if there is proof that they have been able to go outside the oath that they took, then it's actually a basis of impeachment. Although that now falls under the legal aspect, not the transition aspect.
There's something you mentioned that I found particularly interesting. The process of handing over.
Yes.
I heard you mention that if the handing over isn't proper, what is it that would constitute an improper process in handing over, and one which would bring about a constitutional crisis, as you mentioned?
No, the transition which would bring a crisis primarily would be if the assumption part of taking the oath is not properly conducted.
And how would it be improperly conducted?
For example, hypothetically speaking. If the president-elect today walked into Harambee House or State House without taking the oath, then that would be improper.
Okay.
Yes. That means the process of transitioning from the outgoing president to the incoming president
Yes.
will not have adhered
Yes.
to the Constitution. The Constitution uses, under Article 74 is mandatory. The state officer shall.
So that's mandatory.
It's mandatory.
And in the handing over process, must the current president hand over? Does the law make it absolutely mandatory for him to hand over? And what does handing over actually, the process, what is he handing over? And what does it signify?
In a country that is led by the rule of law like ours, the Constitution and the various acts presume an orderly society.
Presumes.
Yes.
Okay.
It presumes an orderly society whereby the processes that lead to one regime to another are followed according to the law. And it's not about whether we like it or not. It's a constitutional responsibility. It's actually a constitutional duty. So that once that process sets in, then it's not about what I like or what I don't like. And let me give you a very good example, although it's a historical example. And I'm saying this because it's already in the public domain and it's in the past. In 2017, there was an annulment in the first place, or the first from the first petition. There was then a second petition, which then ratified the outcome of the second election. The same Chief Justice who led the court in annulling the first. It was the same Chief Justice who oversaw the swearing in
the second.
So it's a constitutional duty. It's not a whimsical duty.
You must
Yes.
perform it.
You must perform it.
And that is part of the oath that you took
Absolutely.
when you took office,
Yes.
whether as Chief Justice, as Registrar,
And every state
or as
officer.
President.
Yes.
So the President must also be in Kasarani or whatever the venue is
Yes.
to hand over, unless incapacitated.
That's true.
Okay. Let's take a break. And before we take a break, let me read the two oaths. And then there'll be some questions that come out of this.
Okay.
So the first oath is the oath or solemn affirmation of allegiance of the President. And it says, I, Charles Timothy Mamboleo, in full realization of the high calling I assume as President of the Republic of Kenya, do swear or do solemnly affirm that I'll be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya, that I will obey, preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution of Kenya as by law established and all other laws of the Republic, and that I will protect and uphold the sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya. In the case of an oath, you conclude with, so help me God.
Yes.
I'll come to the question of what is the difference between swearing and solemnly affirming. Anyway, the second oath. Oath or solemn affirmation of due execution of office of the President. I, Charles Timothy Mamboleo, swear or do solemnly affirm that I'll truly and diligently serve the people and the Republic of Kenya in the office of the President of the Republic of Kenya, that I will diligently discharge my duties and perform my functions in the office of President of the Republic of Kenya, and I will do justice to all in accordance with this Constitution as by law established and the laws of Kenya without fear, favor, affection, or ill will. And in the case of the oath, so help me God. So let's take a break. The Honorable Joseph Were from the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary is here with us, and he's taking us through this process of assumption of office and handover of the instruments of power from one president to another president, as we are going to see in the next couple of weeks or months. This is what we want to understand. What's this process? What does it mean? 28 minutes to 8. Quick break. We'll be back shortly.
11 degrees. Sunny conditions for a change in Nairobi. Highs of 24 and lows of 10. It's sunny at 14 in Nakuru. Highs of 24 and we'll see highs of 22 in a cloudy Nyeri at 11. It's 14 degrees and mostly cloudy in Eldoret. Highs of 21 and lows of 12. And it's raining in Mombasa at 22. It'll go to highs of 28. 28 will be the high in a rainy Malindi at 24. It's raining in Kisumu at 20, highs of 27, and mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 18, highs of 26 and lows of 14. Kampala's raining at 18, highs of 24 and lows of 17, mostly sunny conditions at 21 in Dar es Salaam, highs of 29 and lows of 20. It's 14 and cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 23 and lows of 5, while it's mostly clear in Lagos at 23, we'll see highs of 29, highs of 31 in a cloudy Kinshasa at 22, we'll see highs of 21. The Langata Road interchange is complete, and so folks are using that. So that traffic that we would normally see on Langata Road is completely clear. Just at the exit, right there at the T-Mall is where you see a little bit, then going out towards the CBD. It's been really busy on Jogo Road this morning, and we're looking at way past that Makadara train station out towards Landys Road. We don't even know where this traffic is spilling over from or to, but it's not a good situation this morning. It's really, really heavy, spilling onto Haile Selassie, coming in from Haile Selassie to that Kamkunji roundabout. It's thumping traffic, bumper to bumper, that started over an hour and a half ago. So let's keep an eye on that. Still looking for the causes of such. If you can use another route to get into the city, you might want to do that. And then, like magic, there's the Thika Superhighway. Traffic from Survey into the city on Muranga Road is bumper to bumper. And we're also looking at this happening on Kiambu Road. Your exits on the Nairobi Expressway coming out of Westlands is where you see the most trouble coming out of Westlands today. Into the CBD from Juja Road also giving us that heavy traffic. Kangunda Road also joining the fray. Manyanja Road then connecting with Outer Ring. So today's that day. Traffic is already doing the thing well before traffic hour. We'll keep an eye on things. Let us know where you might be stuck this morning. Your bypasses will help this morning for the first time in a while. You want to use them. SpiceFM on Twitter. Talk to us there.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
24 minutes to
done
end
right.
the conversation.
94.4.
The Honorable Joseph Were, who is from the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. We are talking about the process and the role of the judiciary in the assumption of office of a new president. I just read from the third schedule of the Constitution, the national oaths and affirmations, the two oaths that an incoming president or that a president takes. So it's either an oath or a solemn affirmation. What's the difference?
Now, the difference is, I was supposed to leave it the same. But basically, an oath is where the person taking the oath uses a religious book, mostly like in Kenya, a Bible, a Quran, or a Gita, at the time of taking the oath. Affirmation is where they choose to lift up their right hand and not use any of the religious books in taking the oath. That's the main difference.
That's it.
That's it. So in the actual oath, and that is part of what the judiciary does in advance, is to engage the incoming president and deputy president. The same for governors and deputy governors, to find out what is your preferred method of taking an oath. Because we do not take a presumption about what they prefer. Because some people are religious, but they do not, in their religious beliefs, they don't hold the Bible. They prefer using lifting up their right hands, like the Quakers.
Okay.
So those are some of the preparations we do before the actual day. So now the oath, once we have confirmed, if they are using the religious book, we'll say oath. If they're not using the religious book, we'll say affirmation. And if we are affirming, then at the end, you'll not put so help me God.
You just end without saying so help
You just
me.
end that. No,
But what
or
if this
ill will.
person is, like you've said, they are religious, but in their religious beliefs, they don't swear using the their book.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So I don't want to hold it, but
Yes.
it can be present. Can it be on the table and I just raise my hand?
Absolutely.
So if I raise my hand and the Bible is on the table,
Yes.
is that an oath or an affirmation?
It's an affirmation.
Because I'm not touching it.
Yes. What we do is we avail all the three actually, and the Constitution. So your left hand will be on the Constitution. So your right hand will either lift the book or lift up. So if you're not holding it, then it's an affirmation.
And both are acceptable.
Both are acceptable.
Okay.
Yes.
And both are binding.
Both are binding. Yes.
All right. So, as we see these things taking place, and as we see that, in terms of transition, after the oath has been taken, okay, let me go back.
Yes.
Prior to the taking of the oath,
Yes.
one can assume that the instruments of power then have not been handed over to said individual, and that there is little they can or cannot do. Am I right?
That is true.
After the taking of the oath, then basically everything that, are we saying now that everything that would be necessary, instruments of power, yet again, for president to carry out his or her duty, as well as the deputy president to carry out his or her duty, then now have been handed over, and then you can go ahead with your duties? Is that what we are saying now? That kind of opens the door?
Yes,
Or-
the oath is what I would say crystallizes. You're getting into that office. It's what now gives you the power to begin doing whatever your office requires you to do. You would not be given the instruments of power before you take the oath,
Okay.
because then you're not president yet.
Okay.
And for the judiciary, the role we play is to facilitate that process, where we now have the president or a governor, so that then the other processes, which include now the handing over of the instruments of power, can set in. In the case of governors, for example, under the Assumption of Office of Governor Act, it envisaged that situation.
Yeah.
That the outgoing governor might not be present, might refuse to come and hand over. That does not invalidate the oath that has been taken by the incoming governor. And that's why I'm saying that the laws are presuming an orderly society. You may be dissatisfied, but if the determination has come with finality that another person must take over, then you have a responsibility. And that is why the oath is actually a very solemn thing.
Yes.
Yes, because it binds you until the last day, the last minute of your office. So it's a responsibility even on the outgoing person to ensure an orderly transition. So as we come in to facilitate in the part of ensuring that the person who has been elected actually then assumes responsibility and ensures that there is no lacuna in terms of governance, either at the national level or at the county level.
But we've seen it at the county level. And in the case, for example, of impeachment, let's say in Wajir, right?
Yes.
One governor feels that the process of impeachment has not been fair and they've gone to court. The other governor feels, well, the Senate has confirmed the impeachment. It has been gazetted, called in to come, and the judiciary is present to conduct the swearing in of a new governor.
Yes.
So the old governor is not present.
Yes.
That can also happen in the office of the president.
Yes.
In the case of impeachment. So if the president is not present, that's the question I was asking. Who brings the sword and gives the sword to the incoming person?
The
Who goes to State House to pick it?
The sword and not Uber, definitely. The sword and the Constitution are symbolic to symbolize that the person who has taken the oath
Is
now
the
is
new
assuming office. But just like with the governors, it does not invalidate. The person becomes president. Then now, if for any reason that was to happen, God forbid, then it can be more of an administrative aspect. It may not have to be done at the open ceremony, but it would have to be done at some point.
So do I hear you to be saying that the current president doesn't need to be physically present for the swearing in to take place and for the handing over to take place? But then how do you hand over if the person who's supposed to hand over isn't present?
Now, without delving into their details,
Yes.
that is why we have the Assumption of Office of President Committee the assumption of office of President Committee is supposed to ensure the transition, including of reports, security briefings, reports from the outgoing cabinet secretaries, if any, so that when the next president comes, they find a brief on their desk. They're supposed to coordinate the security of the incoming president. They're supposed to coordinate, office. Of course, we know where the office is, but are there things that the incoming president wants?
Okay.
That is the function of the assumption of the main, let me call it the main committee. So, though we sit in the main committee, our role is twofold. One, to work with that committee on the broader issues, but principally to ensure that now the act that makes this incoming elect person to be actual president or governor is actualized, to ensure that there is a smooth transition from one regime to another regime.
What would stop it from being a smooth transition? What are some of the factors that will stop this from being smooth? I mean, look, taking all these factors into consideration, the two individuals are there. What would stop it from being smooth from what you see? Because if you're there to ensure that 1, 2, 3 happens, what would stop it from being smooth?
Now, if any of the principal players, and let me zero down even on the judiciary, for a moment, the Constitution says the president shall take the oath before the Chief Justice, or in the absence of the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice. If there was no
Chief Justice,
Chief Justice or Deputy Chief Justice, that would create a crisis. Yes. Or if they were present, and God forbid again, but they didn't appear.
Yes.
Again, that would be a crisis.
That would be a crisis.
And that's why for us as the judiciary, because we deem that we should be principally the people who ensure that the transition, number one, is peaceful and is lawful.
When you say crisis, what do you mean? What is it that would actually happen that you could look at and say, okay, this is the crisis?
Now, the crisis would be that the Constitution puts an end time to an outgoing president. That end time has come. But you have not facilitated the incoming president to take office. In fact, the Constitution does not envisage a minute, for example, without a president.
Oh dear.
And that is why it is, in a proper transition then, the outgoing president ought to be present, and immediately the incoming president takes the oath. Then the outgoing president term comes to an end. And the incoming president from that minute is president. We are moving from where we have a president who has come through an election, if it's outgoing, through the transition period with limited powers, now immediately to a president who has the full powers under the Constitution and under the law.
And the time frame for all this is what exactly?
Now, the time frame begins to run, a lot of it is actually in the law. It begins to run both for the president and for the governors at the point when elections are done. Elections are done concurrently under the Constitution for all the 6 positions. Now, and I'm speaking for the various scenarios, if there is no petition, then you're saying that the first Tuesday after 14 days after the declaration of the presidential results, then the president is sworn in. So even as a judiciary...
So the first Tuesday after 14 days, it has to be a Tuesday?
It has to be a Tuesday.
Okay.
Just the same way the elections is done on this second Tuesday in August of every 5th year. So it has to be a Tuesday. Then...
and when you say 14 days, does it include weekends or it excludes weekends?
It includes weekends.
Okay.
So like for us, the judiciary, how we are preparing for this transition is we are counting those days. When was the declaration made? On Monday. When do the 14 days end?
Lapse.
So even if the 14 days lapse on a Monday, then the next day, Tuesday, the president ought to be sworn in. And we prepare with that
with that
aspect
scenario number one.
in mind.
Scenario number two
Scenario
is...
number two is a petition. It will go through the motions, the 7 days to file the petition, the 14 days for the Supreme Court to render its decision. And if they say the decision is, the petition is not well grounded, you have 7 days to swear in the president.
Right.
Yes. If they say if there is either what I heard you had discussed in the morning, the runoff and the and the rerun,
Yes.
then we go through that period. Either the 30 days or the 60 days for the two scenarios. Then the outcome, again, you have the 7 days.
We have a unique situation where 2 counties did not have an election for a governor.
Yes.
Does that timetable take into consideration this delay?
The presidential?
Oh, no. The governors.
The governors.
governors.
When it comes to their position and their swearing in and the transition and everything else that we're speaking of.
Absolutely.
It's the same scenario.
Yes.
It's from
So
the
for
day
the-
that election will
Now,
be
for the
held.
governors, the days are a little different. The governors, it says 10 days after the declaration, the first Thursday.
Okay.
So, like in our current situation, we're actually preparing to swear in the 45 governors next week on Thursday, because all of them were declared by I think the last was Narok on Sunday, where the declaration was made. And maybe just for clarity, based on the decision of the Supreme Court, declaration is when the returning officer says that Eric Latif has
Is
I'm
the winner
I'm wishing you
of-
well.
Mr. Tunerena
The
Moyo,
governor of this particular county. Yes.
Now, so in the case of these 2 counties, Mombasa and Kakamega, it'll be from the day they hold their election.
Absolutely.
And then now we look at the day the returning
You
officer
count
says...
10 days, then the first Thursday.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Constitution is the one that establishes this assumption of office of President Committee. Or is it a law?
talks about, but there's the one that actually establishes that committee is the act, we call it the Office of the Assumption of President Act,
Okay.
2012.
Who chairs this committee,
It is-
according to the law?
It is chaired by the Secretary of the Cabinet.
Secretary to the Cabinet.
Yes. And, then
And that
it
title
has-
is specific, Secretary to the Cabinet.
Yes.
Okay. If there's no Secretary to the Cabinet, then what?
You're taking me to court. But there is always a substantive or a designated. And that's why the current committee is meeting. Yes.
Because he's acting. Secretary to the Cabinet.
I don't have the instruments, so I wouldn't want to say acting or not. I'm saying that because in the past, of course you're aware, in the past you had where the head of public service
Was also
was also
Secretary
the
to the
Secretary
Cabinet.
to the Cabinet.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So there's this title called Secretary to the Cabinet.
Yes.
And in Executive Order number, whatever the last one was, didn't have Secretary to the Cabinet.
Yes.
So what happens in that case? What if President Uhuru Kenyatta had actually not designated the head of public service to be the Secretary to the Cabinet? So are we saying that the president must have this office?
Must have either substantive or in acting capacity. Because then it would also be saying that the cabinet does not meet,
Have minutes.
which is unlikely. Yes.
You know, there's something that I'm actually belaboring a point here. There are issues that we've talked about, and the one which has stuck in my mind is a situation where our constitution doesn't provide for what next to do. Now, in a case like that, we say we have a crisis. What do we do?
That's why we have the judiciary.
The judiciary now will
The
decide.
judiciary will step in. You said you're called Ndu.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Yes.
Can come to court
Yes.
and say we have this situation. Can we have an interpretation? And depending at what level it is, it could either go to the High Court or it would go to the Supreme Court. If it directly deals with an election to deal with the president, that would go to the Supreme Court. If it's just about a constitutional interpretation about that lacuna, it will begin with the High Court. So it's only that there will be a little bit of time to wait for that interpretation to come forth. But it would definitely be resolved. I think without digressing, what we've seen our courts doing progressively is to render jurisprudence on matters and issues that were not fully envisaged even by the Constitution at the time of framing, or which may have been assumed by the Constitution even at the time of its framing.
Okay.
So the courts will always come in to render a declaration or provide a solution on the way forward.
There's an article that appeared in the papers recently. It was a Business Daily.
Yes.
It was entitled, "After 6 years of wait, Fund Hands Court Independence from Executive." They proceeded to say that the Judiciary Fund was passed in 2016. Then they also said that on that Friday, 9 billion shillings was loaded into the fund for the half-year budget 2022-2023. And it said further that the operationalization of the Judiciary Fund, in aid of planning and the timely execution of operations had begun. Now, there's a little talk here. Has the Judiciary Fund actually been activated?
That's true. From the 1st of July.
It has.
It
In
has.
this financial year.
In this financial year.
Yes.
Definitely there was a delay. Under the Constitution, the initial period was supposed to be within 1 year. It's among the acts that were supposed to have been enacted within 1 year of the promulgation of the new Constitution. There was delay until 2016, and then getting the regulations also delayed until 2019, 2020, because you need the regulations to align various aspects that the Act, the Act gives the broad areas. The regulations now comes in to give the details, the nitty-gritties. But working closely both with the National Treasury, the Controller of Budget, Central Bank, and of course the Judiciary itself, we've been able to operationalize that act.
What does this independence therefore mean for the judiciary?
It means that we do not have to then every week, so to speak, run to National Treasury asking for exchequer. Ideally, if the government had the 3 trillion money available at the beginning of the financial year, they would have put our 18 billion in our account.
So you would have
that we would run. But because government runs through collection of taxes, so basically what it means is that we have had an engagement whereby we have an agreed interval when they are able to disburse funds to the Judiciary Fund, so that then we do not have to go every week or every other week to tell them we need this amount of money for this, and we need this for salaries, and we need this for development to pay our contractors and pay our ICT and everything else.
So currently, as the law stipulates, what's the percentage of the national budget that goes into the Judiciary Fund?
Unfortunately, we do not have a law. Basically, we go with the appropriations done by the National Assembly. The 18 billion we have is maybe just slightly above 0.5% of the national budget.
So it goes with the whims and the goodwill of the National Assembly?
Partly, yes.
What is envisioned in the Constitution?
The Constitution, okay, in the independence that you're talking about under the Judiciary Fund was whereby understanding the available resources and the available needs, the judiciary will be able to get resources that are sufficient enough for it to undertake its core mandate of dispensation of justice and the allied services, the support services that come with it. The independence that then is envisaged is that we would have that fund envisages that we get directly from the consolidated fund. Once it's appropriated by the National Assembly, it's then loaded onto the judiciary budget. And just for a point of correction, the 9 billion is the judiciary's half-year budget of the 18 billion.
18 billion for the year.
So loading budget is not putting the 9 million in the account. You're saying that this is your budget for this year. As you work out for this half year, you have that budget to work with. Because the way government works under the Public Finance Management Act, you cannot transact until, if you don't have a budget, it becomes an offense that actually can cause one to be taken to court.
Right.
So that allows then we can be able to say, okay, our budget says we have got this amount of money for this activity. Can we then now begin our processes as we await the loading of money, or as we work with the money that we already have?
Okay.
Yes.
Would there be an instance where you have a budget? Yes, you have the 9 billion shillings. Yes, it has not been put in your account, but you've run out of the money that has been put in the account in a half year. What happens?
Now, there are a number of scenarios that can happen. One is to engage both the National Assembly and Treasury for what you call supplementary budget. That is one of the issues. Number two is to cut down on some of the things that will not critically offend the dispensation of justice. And number three, the other thing you can do is to ask the National Treasury to open up for you for the rest of the year. Because some of the issues, you would not pay them halfway. For example, if you're paying for medical insurance, you need to pay for the whole year. So you can allow, the National Treasury can allow you to open up that item for the whole year, that you're able to pay the whole amount that is due for an item like that.
Okay.
Yes.
This has been quite enlightening. Asante sana. Honorable Joseph Were is from the office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. We've been talking about the assumption of office, what we expect to see in the coming days. We know that there's a committee meeting here led by Joseph Kenywa. It also includes the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary and the role that then the Judiciary has to play in ensuring that we have a smooth transition. In this particular case, it's a transition from President Uhuru Kenyatta to the new president who will take office whenever they take office. We also have timelines for that, and he's told us about them. Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. We'll be having with us Professor Makao Mutua, the spokesperson for the Raila Odinga Campaign Secretariat, talking about what's been happening and what we expect to see beyond this election. Good morning, 8 a.m.
Thank you.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. IEBC has yet again postponed the gubernatorial elections in Mombasa and Kakamega counties indefinitely. In a statement, IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati said that this is after election officials were threatened. Chebukati has also asked the security apparatus to arrest and prosecute those who were involved in the chaos witnessed at the Bomas of Kenya elections in Kitui Rural, Kacheliba, Pokot South and Rungai constituencies, Nyaki Ward in Meru County, Kwanjenga in Embakasi East in Nairobi have been affected. The elections are scheduled to take place on Tuesday next week. Election in the affected areas are postponed due to errors in the ballot papers. Now, the National Police Service has commenced investigations into the chaotic and violent scenes that were witnessed at the Bomas of Kenya moments before the announcement of the results of the presidential poll by IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati. On the day of the incident, Chebukati had to be whisked away by security personnel after unidentified men stormed the podium and disrupted his would-be address. Order was only restored after police reinforcements were secured the stage and drove out the rowdy protesters. In a statement, NPS, National Police Service, noted that it has secured CCTV footage that would aid in investigations. Now, the Public Service Commission has affirmed that it is on course in its plans to manage the transition between the outgoing and the incoming administrations. Commission Chairperson Ambassador Anthony Mushiri says they've shared advisories with the current and the incoming administrations on matters related to establishing government structures, appointments and human resource for the incoming national and county administrations. Mushiri further said that they are certain that there will be no disruptions of service and there will be seamless continuity.
Advisory number 3 is on appointment letters for principal secretaries. Advisory number 4 is on delegation instrument and vesting of the role of the authorized officer. Advisory number 5 is on a high-level induction program for cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries. The advisories is both for the exiting and incoming new administration. It is also intended to ensure there is seamless continuity of public service.
And as Azimio Moja presidential candidate Raila Odinga says he is meeting with elected members from the alliance who've agreed with him on the steps they'll plan to take towards petitioning the presidential results. Raila said they'll not tire until justice prevails.
Basically, it was a familiarization meeting, and we also talked about a way forward. We've given them a brief as where we are with regard to presidential elections, and they have approved the steps that we have decided to take as a Azimio coalition.
Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka said that the activities that took place at the Bomas of Kenya were a clear indication that the presidential results were marred with irregularities.
The composition by late brother Senator Kajwang that nchi hii bado ni mapambano ili haki mwishowe ipatikane so that Kenyans can live happily together, and therefore the legal process continues, the political process also continues. And we also know that we are all guided by what is before the registrar of political parties. It's important for me to say so because we have two coalitions or several coalitions that are properly registered before the registrar of political parties. And it is important for all of us to adhere to the provisions of that particular legislation.
Azimio's running mate Martha Karua also retreated that their figures in terms of elected leaders showed that they command the National Assembly. Karua also said that they were sure that their victory would be finally coming home.
The Senate, our competitors are up by 1, but the National Assembly we command. We therefore must look and plan how we are going to execute our mandate. On the matter of the election, ours is victory deferred. As we explore all legal and constitutional avenues, let everybody know victory is coming home.
And as political parties continue to restructure themselves, the Amani National Party has nominated its party leader Musalia Mudavadi for the appointment as the Prime Cabinet Secretary. In a special meeting by the party's Council Bureau, the council unanimously nominated Mudavadi for the position. The new position, to be created through an executive order, was agreed upon by the founding party members of Kenya Kwanza in an agreement by President-elect William Ruto of UDA, Moses Wetangula of Ford Kenya, and Musalia Mudavadi of ANC. This is News. I am Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
After a few days of no traffic, and we're seeing really heavy traffic in the CBD this morning, coming off Jogo Road, Lunga is also quite affected. In and outbound traffic continues. Jogo Road then heading out towards Landis. In and outbound traffic is a nightmare, and still really heavy on Haile Selassie going into the CBD, and then whatever is coming off Ngong Road. So this morning doesn't look good, and we're looking at your expressway exits, quite a number of them, jam-packed, coming out of Westlands, Imara Daima, doing that thing. The Thika Superhighway, my goodness, traffic is seeping well beyond that outer ring junction, and Kiambu Road also continues to be really, really busy. It's also the same thing on Limuru Road today. If you are wondering if we're back into the saddle, we are, if traffic is any indication. Keep an eye on things and see what's going on. Tell us what's going on where you are. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Good morning.
The only
Welcome
way
to
to
the start
start your
of
day.
The conversation. We are live on Spice FM, online, and also now on KTN Home. It's the 18th day of August 2022. We want to talk about the general election outcomes and implications. Professor Makao Mutua is with us. Before he says hello, let's hear the cocoa and the cow and the kaka.
Yes, this is our final proverb from the wonderful country of Cameroon. This pigeon. Thing where happen for Coco, ne go happen for Kaka.
Let me help you.
Please
Instead
do.
of saying say E.
E. Like that. So should I read this again and then
No,
and
read
say
it again,
E?
you say E.
So the A is E. Right.
Is that Greek?
No, this is
Many
pigeon.
would argue that it is.
This is pigeon.
Yeah, this pigeon.
Thing where E, not A. E happen for Coco, ne E go happen for Kaka. In short, what goes around comes around.
It sounds like what's good for the goose is
Good for the gander or the duck.
Good for the duck.
So long as it's an avian creature, it's
We're
okay.
good.
Yes.
All right.
So direct translation, say again, City. Direct translation, not interpretation.
Whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans will happen to fresh beans as well.
Okay.
That sounds like something about the elections.
Does it, Prof?
It's just, I mean, I wonder why he chose it. I think he's trying to tease me or something.
So what do you think you are? Are you a cocoa bean or the bean? Are you the cocoa or the kaka?
My lips are sealed.
Professor Makamoto, welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation.
Thank you so
Welcome
much.
to the hot seat, man.
Thank you, and glad to be here once again.
Okay. It's been a grueling couple of weeks and then days as the election then happened, as counting and tallying and declaration happened across the country and at Bomas. You must have been very busy.
Yeah, well, that's all true. But before I say anything, I want to offer my deepest condolences to the family of Daniel Musyoka, the IEBC official. I think he was in Embakasi,
Yes.
who was apparently abducted and found murdered in Kajiado. This is obviously a dastardly criminal act, and I cannot fathom or imagine who would do such a thing. I'm sure that the authorities are following up on what happened, and we hope that they will bring to account those responsible. It's very terrible.
It is.
Reminds us of Musando, really, in 2017. Yeah, very terrible.
As now that we've gone into that direction, you know, as a seasoned and a senior human rights advocate, when you see the case of Msando, and so far nobody has even been presented to court with capability about this, what does it say?
You know, there has always been a dark side to our republic, in which political killings and assassinations have always been there, especially during moments of national tension and inflection, such as elections. The terrible thing is that many of these killings have never been solved. You can go way back to the dawn of independence with Pio Kamapinto and others. There seems to be a conspiracy of silence about unveiling the perpetrators of these heinous offenses against individuals in our society. You probably know that I headed a task force on Truth Commission, and we recommended that these issues be brought to light, and of course they have not. And one of the things that I had hoped, that governments would do going forward, it's to investigate these murders, not just of Musando, but all the others that have gone before. It's a very dark record for our country.
Indeed. So again to the issue of what's happened in the last couple of days, leading up to Monday at Bomas of Kenya. And you are the spokesperson for the Azimio la Umoja presidential campaign secretariat. We've seen that, and then we've seen the statement by Raila Odinga. We've seen the statement, him accompanied by his running mate Martha Karua, and saying an injustice basically has been conducted here. And there are very many questions that are left in people's minds. So exactly what happened in this election then? What would you say happened in the election?
Well, the election, first of all, let me say, has many black boxes, meaning blank spaces where information is not available. And to the extent that there are some bright spots where we have some sunlight, that those those sort of transparent boxes show us things that are not palatable. But let me just go back a little bit and say that the campaigns were largely peaceful throughout the country, except for a few incidents, including the attempted sort of stoning of the helicopter for my candidate, Mr. Odinga, and a few other incidents here and there. But there were other systemic issues that I think we cannot sweep under the carpet at this point. For example, the IEBC took a long time to produce a register. And once that happened, it was too close to the election for us to be able to carry out a proper audit of that register. So that issue remains in abeyance. In other words, it's an issue that we're going to have to look at. You remember very well that there were audits by the KPMG firm of the 2017 register, but also the 2022 register. In particular, there were issues which were identified in the 2017 register, including failures of technology or compromises of the infrastructure of technology of the IEBC. We've never really gotten to understand whether those issues were addressed because, again, those reports were not produced in time. So those are some issues there. There are other issues which were raised about the composition of, obviously, the returning officers of the IEBC. There were questions about the sort of ethnic balance there, which were not satisfactorily addressed. And of course, then, as you recall very well, there were other issues closer to the election, which were more concerning. One of them was obviously the sudden appearance of ballot boxes at the airport without the knowledge of many commissioners. There's information about what happened in the back room of the commission in terms of the procurement of those ballot boxes and why that was kept secret from even some commissioners. So that's an issue, obviously a point of discussion, if you will. Then, of course, there was a big question of the Venezuelans who appeared carrying important election materials in their backpacks. We understand that they were arrested. We are still trying to find out what happened to them and what, in fact, they were carrying in those backpacks and their purpose in this country. So, I mean, there are any number of issues that you can think about prior to the, balloting day. And of course, then there were, balloting day issues here and there. But I think the big one that I think we all have to discuss this morning is, of course, the conduct of the chairperson himself, Mr. Chebukati. I must say that we engaged him throughout, and we wanted to be a partner to him to carry out a clean election in this country. I myself met with him any number of times, offered our good faith and hand in doing this because, elections in this country are a matter of life and death, as we've just seen with Mr. Musyoka. And so it behooves the chairman of the commission to conduct himself with the utmost propriety. And I think, part of that, was missing in this particular case. Of course, as I said, the biggest one really is shall I call, unilateral announcement of the result of the election without the consent and the permission of the commission itself.
Prof, speculation is rife, about, what he could or could not have done. And, I mean, obviously, we're talking about process prior to the announcement. We're talking about corporate consensus. Again, prior to the announcement that he made, and what really was the bone of contention here. And from the side which you speak, what exactly is the bone of contention? Because, I think it's clear to everybody that as the chairperson of the commission, he can actually go and announce the results of the election in the manner in which he did. He can announce them. Is the issue then that there was no corporate consensus before he did that? And from what we see in terms of reports today, is that, they talked about it. One side says they did, another side says they did not. Here we are, it's one man's word against another. But what exactly was zoning into the issue here?
Yeah. There's a reason, my sister, as to why we fought for and adopted the 2010 Constitution, which, as I've said before in this forum, is one of the most progressive in the world. Nations do not just wake up in the morning and decide to write new national charters. They do that for a reason. And the basic reason is to cure existing problems, to put the country on a good footing. If you look at our Constitution, 2010 Constitution, you will see that it sought to create independent institutions within the state, but independent, essentially of the executive, because the constitutional framework that existed prior to 2010 created an imperial executive and an imperial president. So the idea was to decouple the executive from controlling, everything in our lives. One of those institutions which was created was the IEBC, the electoral body. We all know the history of the ECK, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, which is the predecessor organization to the IEBC. I think, Eric, I don't know that you are old enough to remember this, and I'm not pulling rank here, but I think CT is old enough to remember this. I will not review any ages here, and of course, my sister here.
The election of Lechko in 1956.
Yeah, the less said about my sister here, the better about age. That commission, you remember in 2007, and how shambolic that process was. Remember Mr. Kivuitu disappearing and then appearing at dusk to swear in a certain president just before night fell in Kenya. And you remember, of course, what happened later. Our country went into spasms of genocidal violence, and we almost went to hell. Mr. Kivuitu, I should say, I've met him later, a year later, bumped into him, I should say, in a restaurant, and I asked him what happened. And you know what his response was? His response was, that whole period is a blur in my mind. He could not remember what happened. But that is a problem that we are trying to cure, that a commission entrusted with this sacred responsibility of essentially taking the temperature of the country through an election and giving us leaders could be that shambolic. So that is what the IEBC sought to cure. Number one, to prevent a dictator from ruling the commission. And number two, to prevent the executive from capturing that leader. So Mr. Chebukati is not a dictator. The law is very clear on what he can and cannot do. And I should say the law, by the law here, I mean the Constitution, I mean the applicable IEBC law, and of course case law itself, which is pronouncements of judges. In particular, the one thing that I just want to focus on here is Mr. Chebukati's authority or powers to pronounce on the election. Mr. Chebukati does not conduct the election. The election is conducted by the IEBC as an institution. Mr. Chebukati does not give himself permission to pronounce on the results of the election. Mr. Chebukati announces the decision of the commission about the outcome of the election. He is a mouthpiece of the commission. He does not decide what to announce.
Which election?
This is a basic distinction. The presidential election. This is a basic distinction. He does not decide what to announce. He announces what is decided by the commission.
Is it the commission that decides or what the voters decide? I mean, we've got to get
No, obviously.
Let's start from the beginning.
No. Of course, the voters decide the election. The commission conducts it, tallies, and produces final figures of what the electorate wants to do. Then the commissioners decide, what Mr. Chebukati or the chair of the commission should tell the nation about the election. Decisions of the commission, and I'm sure you've read the applicable law, are taken either by consensus or by a majority of the commissioners. It cannot be taken by the chair himself. It cannot be taken by the chair acting with a minority
of the commission.
Of rogue, not just the commission, of rogue commissioners, a minority of rogue commissioners.
Prof, let me ask you a question.
So let me just say this before you get in.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second thing in the Maina Kiai case, of course, the court was very clear that the chair of the commission is not a dictator. He's just one individual who acts within a corporate body because the IEBC is constituted as a democratic institution.
Yeah.
I want to make this very clear. Otherwise, all the reforms that we've done in this country will be for naught. If Mr. C.T. Muga here could, if he became the chair of the commission, could just go up there
and decide
and pull out of his one ear, some figures and announce them.
So let me ask my questions. There is the Elections Act and the regulations that talk about, how an election shall be conducted.
Yes.
The Election Act also stipulates who shall announce the election.
Correct.
There are 6 elections being held on the second Tuesday of August every 5 years. And the returning officer is given a job, either constituency returning officer for MCA MP, county returning officer for senator, woman rep, governor, a chairman of the IEBC as a returning officer for the presidential election. Now, all these 6 elections that are being held, when a returning officer at the constituency level is announcing the winner or the outcome of the MCA and the MP election, who does he need to consult?
He does, the returning officer, first of all, at the polling station, must produce at the end of the election, balloting day, Form 34A. Okay? Those Form 34As are collected and taken to the county level, right? And created, as Form 34B in a presidential election, right? And then that is taken to the National Tallying Center.
Before you answer your question, answer mine.
Yes.
I'm focusing here on the one returning officer at the constituency. The constituency returning officer declares the result of the MCA and the Member of Parliament.
Correct.
Whose decision is he declaring? Is it the commission's decision or is it the decision of the voter as the returning officer? Is there a consultation with any other officer of the IEBC?
No, it's actually an automaton. Is essentially an automaton. His job is mechanical.
Actually, there is consultation. The process at the polling station, by the time you aggregate the votes, ballot boxes are brought forth. It's a process.
It's a process.
They're emptied. Those ballots are placed in heaps. When the counting begins, there is a physical showing of, before you put them aside, given the various candidates, it is shown. And in the presence of all the IEBC officers, all the agents, it is shown. This, you put it aside, one by one by one. When you have them aggregated into those slots, then they are counted. When they are counted and it is agreed upon, that is when you go to that form that you're speaking of, because the results then are entered into that form.
Right.
So at that point, you ask about consultation, that is a consultation.
My question is specific.
Yes.
The returning officer,
yes,
does he consult any other IEBC officer for consensus before announcing the election, not the agents.
Oh, no. You've missed my point. I am saying
I want Prof to answer my
that
question.
process, yes, he can answer.
Thank you. Prof, please answer that question.
Why are you stopping?
Using the law,
why are you stopping your
because he's
colleague
introducing another question before you've answered
It isn't another question, really.
No. I think he's just filling in the gaps. And essentially, it is that at the polling station, when the balloting takes place and the counting takes place at the level of the constituency, the agents are present to either okay or dispute the tally that's been entered in that process. Then the returning officer then, announces the result. Okay, that result is still subject to verification.
The two of you are talking about a result without asking. This thing that goes into Form 34A, what is it that happens? That process, the very counting, emptying the ballot boxes, that is the consultative process.
But
everyone is involved in seeing what it is that brings about the aggregate, which then goes into the form.
We're in agreement up to that point.
No, but let's not assume that simply because there's a process that CT is talking about, that process is now sanitized simply because of that the presence of all the individuals that we're talking about. Because we know that there are other processes that are taking place prior to balloting. So, for example, when you go to the polling station, you are identified through an electronic means.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
It's called a KIMS kit, we are told.
Correct. That's a famous word now, KIMS kit. Okay. You are identified there, and then you are given paper ballots.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that a lot of shenanigans could take place in that process. Okay. So, because you are being identified, but you really, as a voter, do not know who is controlling the technology that's identifying you.
Yeah.
And you don't know who else has access to it.
Prof.
You don't know that. Let me just say this.
Eric actually does have a point because we are bringing one aspect of the electoral process into another without addressing one first. Because if we talk about issues of irregularity, that's a completely different discussion.
Correct.
If we're talking about processes and what Eric asked with regards to, look, there's a returning officer, okay? He has a function. And I was saying before that function, something happens that enables that function that we refer to take place.
Correct.
Now, you have introduced yet another aspect, which is now a completely different discussion.
Which goes completely off my question.
No.
Let's take a break. So we can have a conversation off air as we take this break, and then we come back in consultations.
We come back in consultation.
Yes, and agree on the question.
Okay.
The question for me is very simple. You said that Wafula Chebukati cannot unilaterally announce the election result.
Correct.
It has to be the decision of the commission.
Correct.
My question is, he is one of 3 returning officers. Do the other 2 returning officers also have to announce the result in consultation and concurrence with the commission? That is all the question I'm asking.
We'll come back.
So you'll take us through the other 2.
We'll do.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, 29 minutes to 9. We are taking a break. Professor Makao Mutua, spokesperson for the Raila Odinga Campaign Secretariat, is here with us in the studio. We are looking back into the 2022 election, the conduct of it, and the reasons why the Raila Odinga presidential campaign is saying, no, there's some issues here and we don't accept the result. We'll be back shortly after we take a look at the weather and traffic. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
You've had the luxury of living for 50 years and you cannot still explain yourself. Surely. Oh my God. the reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
It's about shipping up.
You know my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the sheep in the bathtub? Or
the sheep man.
Emmanuel Talam used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a sheep. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about the sheep or a sheep goat?
The Situation Room. Kenya's
Sun is
biggest
out to Nairobi at 14. We'll
conversation.
see highs of 24. Highs of 24 as well, and a mostly cloudy Nakuru at 14. It's 16 and cloudy in Nyeri. We'll see highs of 22, and 21 will be the high in a mostly cloudy Eldoret. It's raining in Mombasa still at 23, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 28 as well in a rainy Malindi at 25. The rain is coming down in Kisumu at 21. We'll see highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 25 as well in a sunny Kakamega currently at 21. It's 19 and rainy in Kampala, highs of 24 and lows of 17, while Dar es Salaam is sunny at 23. It's a good highs of 29. Partly sunny conditions at 15 now in Johannesburg, highs of 23, and it's mostly clear at 23 in Lagos, highs of 29. 31 will be the high in a mostly cloudy Kinshasa at 21. If you're wondering if you can make the great escape to or from the city, probably not just yet, because it's still really jam-packed as you're coming off Jogo Road out towards Landis and into Kamkunji. Haile Selassie was busy from the morning and it's still doing the same thing. Langata Road not looking too bad, but I take that back. It is. Inbound traffic is quite heavy. Getting on to Rilo Odinga Way and then out towards Gong Road this morning. It is crazy. All right, let's take a look at Westlands. What's happening there? Still haven't gotten the memo yet. James Gishuru not looking too bad. The Thika Superhighway, really, really busy traffic and going well into Kiambu County right now. Kiambu Road also doing the thing. In and outbound traffic continues on Lemuru Road. Well into the city as well. We're in traffic hour proper. It's going to continue for some time. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter to keep things moving this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
2049, we are live on
94.4
KTN on KTN News, on Spice FM, and online on Facebook and YouTube. Professor Makao Mutua, spokesperson for the Raila Odinga Campaign Secretariat, is here with us. We are talking about what the issues are with this election. And you've told us, Prof, the main issue, and in fact, we even saw it from your candidate when he spoke, and he said, we reject this election. He said there were illegalities and irregularities in the lead up to the announcement of this election results, the presidential election result. He quoted the law, he quoted the minor KI decision. The chairperson of the IEBC, the dissenting four, Juliana Cherera and the others, released a statement, and in fact they addressed the media. They quoted the KI ruling. The chairman of the election commission has come and said, I performed my duties in due and proper allegiance to the law. He quoted the law, he quoted the minor KI ruling. Everybody is quoting minor KI ruling, and they're saying they are correct. You're the only lawyer in this room. So we are asking for your lawyerly opinion. Every lawyer says the law is clear. So from the clarity on this side of the law, we want to understand, so what is the role of the returning officer in an election? So the chairperson of the Electoral Commission is designated as a returning officer of the presidential election. There is a returning officer at the county level, and there's a returning officer at the constituency level. And then there's the polling, the presiding officers at the polling stations. Now, the person who announces the result of the election is a returning officer, according to law, according to regulations. So before we come to this, IEBC as the body corporate and what happens at Bomas when the presidential result is brought to the chairperson of the IEBC. Take us through that MP, MCA returning officer at the constituency level. So the results are coming from the polling stations, being brought by the presiding officers to the constituency tallying center.
Yes.
And then, like CT is saying, in the full glare of everybody, the observers, the agents, the other election clerks, the results are announced per polling station, they are tallied, and then the returning officer announces the result of the MCAs and the MP, constituency MP.
Correct.
At that point, does the returning officer at the constituency level need to have a sitting with any other official of the IEBC for them to discuss and agree that, yes, this is the commission's result?
No, he doesn't. Because what happens at the polling station level, the tallies are signed off by the agents themselves of the various political competitors as a form of polling station verification. So there's that check and balance. Okay. But I think we should not overthink this particular issue. The results announced by the returning officer at the level of the constituency and transmitted then later to the IEBC headquarters is subject to further verification at the IEBC.
Okay.
That is a check and balance. That is why you saw all those people sitting there for long hours, 24 hours a day, agents and others, going through those forms 34Cs, Form 34As, and comparing to the data that was available on the IEBC portals to make sure that those numbers, were in agreement. That is a process of verification. Because as I was trying to say before we went on the break, if, for example, there was a glaring sort of disparity between, let us say, the number of voters in a constituency and the number of votes that were cast, let us say, for example, the number of voters, exceeded the number of registered voters in that constituency, that would be a glaring problem.
Yes.
That would have to be looked at.
Yes.
And that is why there's a process of verification. The commission itself is not simply a sitting dummy. Okay. Even after that process on the floor takes place, those figures are then looked at by the commission itself as a corporate body. And then the commission goes before the public and announces those results, county by county, broken down into constituencies. You've seen the commissioners take turns in announcing that. I think at one point Mr. Chepkati announced it, at other points Ms. Cherera did, and other commissioners did.
Yeah.
When they do that, they are saying that they are satisfied that they have verified those results, and they have come to agreement that one of them can come and announce those results to the public. Okay. So there's a process within the corporate body itself of agreeing on what the results are in a particular county, in a particular constitutional county. That's why they come out and announce it. That is not different from what happens when all the results from all the counties are tallied together by the commission after verification. And then the commissioners sit down and decide what the result is of the national election for the leading candidates, for all the candidates, rather, I should say. Then one person is sent out to make that announcement. If, for example, Mr. Chebukati was not there, okay, the vice chair of the commission, who is also gazetted as a returning officer, as a deputy returning officer, can go and announce the result of the presidential election. So they are not announcing what is in their head or what they made up in their bedroom, or what occurred to them after drinking Glenlivet. They are announcing what the commissioners agreed upon.
So are you then saying,
let me,
I have to ask you there, though, Prof, are you then saying that whatever Mr. Chebukati announced on that day was not as a result of corporate consensus?
It was not. And I take great exception to my distinguished colleague, my brother here, Mr. Latif, for saying that the 4 commissioners were dissenters. They're not dissenters. You see, in a commission, the majority cannot be the dissenters. It is a minority that can dissent, because the majority is the one that makes the decision. And if a majority makes a decision, those who don't agree with the majority are the dissenters. So in this particular question, and this is a very important point as a narrative, to understand that it is the decision of the 4 that is the decision of the commission, not the decision of 2 rogue commissioners and Mr. Chebukati.
Can we go back? Because this, from 2017, with the decision of the Supreme Court, it then meant that declarations, or rather elections, then were conducted and results then sent from the constituency. What we were seeing at Bomas was then just a verification of what happened there.
Yeah, but that verification is not an idle exercise. It is not an idle exercise.
However, during the process of elections, I mean, we've seen it jump out of the woodwork over the last 3 days that Azimio did not have enough eyeballs on the process, that everywhere across board, polling centers countrywide, that there were just not enough people checking and seeing what was going on, because you had the liberty to do that. Was that the case? And if it was, why then was not enough attention paid at the polling centers?
Well, first of all, I don't know where you are getting your information from, that we didn't have enough eyeballs. We had eyeballs and much more at the polling station. We had bodies with eyeballs and fingers and noses and eyes at those polling stations.
And they were breathing.
And they were alive and well.
Okay.
Now, let me say this, but that is beside the point, in fact. That does not, speak to the point in contention, which is the power of the chairman of the IEBC to unilaterally announce a result that is not a result of a consensus or a majority vote by the commission.
Okay.
That is a key question.
That question then, please answer it with reference to the law, any bit of the law,
yes,
or case law,
yes,
where the word consensus comes in, and consultation, and then announcement.
Yes.
Where exactly, what law says that you, the returning officer of the presidential election, will have to sit in plenary with your commissioners and come to an agreement that this is the decision of Kenyans, and therefore we agree that we go and announce it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the IEBC law is clear in Clause 7 of it that decisions on any matter, which we quoted at the press conference, on any matter before the IEBC must be either by consensus or by a majority of the commissioners present and voting.
Okay.
That is in black and white.
Okay.
Okay.
So, if I could just ask a question, just interject there.
Sure.
Is it only a presidential decision, a presidential election that constitutes a decision of the IEBC? That's why I go back into the other 5 elections.
No.
I think the other 5 elections tantamount to decisions of the IEBC when the returning officer of the county declares Sakaja as the governor-elect of Nairobi?
Absolutely. Otherwise, their verification would be a dead letter.
So at what point does the commission in plenary sit to agree that the returning officer in Nairobi County can declare Edwin Sifuna as the senator-elect of Nairobi?
The commission does not sit and declare that. Okay, the returning officer at the constituency level or at the county level, for the sake of in the case of a senator, announces the winner of the election at that particular county. Okay, that decision of the returning officer is then verified at Bomas, and
so it's not final.
It is not really final. Not really final. It's a determination by the returning officer in that county or constituency that this is the winner of the election.
Okay.
But that decision is subject to verification.
Otherwise, shall there be a further announcement that we should expect that tells us whether Edwin Sifuna is the senator-elect of Nairobi?
So for example, you've seen, like I said before, you've seen the chair of the commission or other commissioners actually announce who the MPs elect are, who the senators elect are, in particular, either counties or constituencies. They're announcing that because they are putting their stamp of approval on the decision of the returning officer.
Okay.
That's what they are doing. Otherwise, verification will mean nothing.
Okay.
And why would the commission then exist? Simply
But Prof, are we saying
that
the elections, the 1,880 elections declared by the various returning officers across the country are subject to verification by the commission and subject to reconfirmation by the commission?
Absolutely.
So they are not final. We don't have an MCA elect, an MP elect, a governor elect, woman rep elect, senator elect until the commission sits in plenary to agree that, yes, we agree with all the decisions.
Yeah, otherwise, the commissioner would not exist, would not need it. We'll simply have, you see, for example, in other countries, let me explain this. In other countries, in the United States, for example, there's no national electoral body. You know that very well.
Yeah.
The elections are a state matter, okay? In that particular case, what is decided at the state level, at the county level, at the state level, at the county level is final. There is no overarching body that decides in the United States that so-and-so has been elected senator from that particular state.
Yeah.
Okay? It is a state secretary of state who verifies those elections and then says, finally, you, Eric Latif, you are the winner.
Right.
There's no agents in Washington. That's final. In our case, there's a final, sort of
authority
that decides that this is the final winner of this election. And then it is certified that way, so that, and one of the things I've said before is this complicating factor of a national election body is perhaps something we ought to look at, to ask ourselves, should we continue to have a national election body or should we break it up into 47 different bodies that can do exactly what you want to do, which is make the result at the county level final. Yeah, we can do that. But as long as you have the national body, it has that role to play.
City wants to ask a question before he comes in. So what I'm hearing you say is, at the point of gazettement, that is the final.
That's the final.
That will have been determined by the commission in plenary, blah, blah, blah.
And it cannot be gazetted unless the commission says so.
So similarly, the returning officer of the county and the constituency and the presidential election can go ahead and announce the result, subject to further verification at a later stage by the commission.
Correct.
So Chebukati's decision
but a commission
is still subject to further deliberation.
Announcement, not decision.
Chebukati's announcement is still subject to further deliberation by the commission at a later stage after he has announced.
Thank you, my sister. I think that my brother here wants Chebukati to make a decision as opposed to
announcement.
Yeah. No, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Let me attempt to understand the law. 2017, matters went to the Supreme Court, and there was a little matter about results that determined a presidential election and the role of the votes at the polling centers.
Correct.
And it being fundamental to that decision. Meaning, if I understand it correctly now, this is me now trying to interpret it. Whatever the outcome that is arrived at the polling center with regards to a presidential election, that is what is the determinant. These are the processes that we've been busy discussing. Where then do their role come in? Okay, you've verified, you've done whatever you've done, you verified again. What if that tallying doesn't add up and it is not in agreement with what happens at the polling stations?
So let me say this, and it's a good question, CT. Let us say, for example, in polling station X, there are 700 registered voters. But then when the Form 34A is filled, it has 800 votes. And that is announced, for the sake of argument, at the polling station. And then and then it becomes part of the tally. And then let us say you come to Bomas to verify that. And the agents notice that the voter turnout in that particular polling station was higher than the number of registered voters in that polling station. This matter is obviously escalated. You don't just note it on a piece of paper and forget about it as though it's a non sequitur. Okay. The commission, when it sits down to look at that number and sees that anomaly, what would you like the commission to do? Would you like the commission as a corporate body to fold its hands and say that our hands are tied by this wrong figure in the Form 34A? It cannot, because if it comes out to announce a wrong result, knowing that it's a wrong result, there's a problem. Okay? And by the way, I should say also that with regard to this particular case that you are referring to, even the announced result of the IEBC is not final. Even that is not final, what is pronounced by Mr. Chebukati. It is subject to review by the Supreme Court.
If it's taken to the Supreme
Even
Court.
the Supreme Court, which then finally determines what happens. For the down ballot races, there are petitions filed before the High Court for the courts to determine. So I know you are focusing on the word final, but I'm trying to give you this sense that the word final is also tentative.
Professor,
until the courts
final
pronounce
is not final.
Professor,
until the courts pronounce themselves.
There's something that happened. You've quoted the U.S., and I want to also quote the U.S. It was in 1972.
Yes.
There was a win by Richard Nixon, the Republican candidate, and he beat McGovern, who was a Democratic candidate. One of the biggest margins that has ever been seen in U.S. history.
Yeah, it was a whitewash.
60% and over.
Yes, yes.
I refer now to the biography of Nixon. People were celebrating, but Nixon was the one who was not celebrating because what was in the background was, and which was about to break out, was the Watergate scandal, which involved the break-in in the headquarters of the Democratic Party in Washington.
Yes.
Okay? Now, I look at our elections. Every electoral cycle, there is some mentioned misdeed or the other, or some scandal or the other.
Correct.
Now, everything that I'm hearing and I'm seeing and reading seems to speak to this very same thing. We've had an election, an outcome has been announced, but it's more like a possible outcome as opposed to a definitive outcome.
Correct.
Now, when we look at a situation such as ours, do we have the mechanisms to be able to conclusively determine whether everything that is in the air, these allegations, this didn't happen, this happened, to conclusively determine that this is actually what happened?
So the short answer is yes. If you look at the whole chain of decision-making process and confirmation, okay, final confirmation. And here you must include the courts. You cannot leave them out. It is not simply a question of the electoral bodies themselves or the electoral body itself, going through its motions to conduct the election, to count and tally and to announce. Okay, that is subject to a court challenge because that's our system. Okay, our judiciary is the one that has the final say on that particular question. So yes, we have the systems. I think the problem that we have, quite frankly, CT, is that when we as a country decided to create these independent institutions, we did not know, or we thought rather that just creating an independent body would suffice because we were trying to cure a problem. And the problem that we are trying to cure is the capture of these institutions by the executive. Okay? That is still a problem because members of the commission can still be captured by the government and they can still do government bidding. But I think the problem that we did not cure, and which is a huge, huge black box in my view, is the capture of institutions which are independent by cartels, by non-state actors. Yeah. That is a real problem. I think I don't want to impugn anyone's credibility, but I just want to say that, for example, I was interviewed, as you all know, for the office of the Chief Justice of Kenya in 2016.
Yep.
Okay, the Judicial Service Commission, gave us, graded us.
They gave you a score.
Yeah, they graded us. Okay, and in that, I'm supposed to have gotten a particular score, which I've read in the papers. That has never been communicated to me as an individual. That's number one. We filed a challenge with the Katiba Institute before the courts to actually get that result. It is now 6 years later. I have not seen that result.
You have no idea how you fared in the interview.
Yeah, so I don't think I lost.
You reject.
I don't think I
You
lost.
say you're Chief Justice in waiting? I mean,
The People's Chief Justice.
I don't think I lost that. I lost that because if I must be told I lost and this is what you scored, right? And that was never done. So what is the Judicial Service Commission hiding? Okay. So that's, you see, so there are problems with these institutions that we call, because you conduct...
To call them independent.
Yeah, and you conduct a process in the open. They say we were interviewed on TV. People say, some people have told me that I did very well on TV, that I won it going away, But then the score showed something different. So why conduct an open interview where it's a public spectacle and you don't give the result and you don't even show what the various commissioners gave me? I would like to see what my friend, Mr. Gideon Wigai, then Attorney General, was a member of the commission, gave me, what the others gave me. I'd like to see all of that. So this is just to say to CT that even our court system does not deliver that justice. There's a lot of questions left to be answered.
In 20 seconds, Prof, speak to the country as a spokesperson for the Raila's Presidential Secretariat. 20 seconds. What do you want to say? What do you want to tell the supporters and the entire country?
I just want to tell our supporters that we want to thank them for coming out in large numbers to vote for us. We appreciate their support. We know that we won the election. We expect to take certain steps going forward, which will confirm that victory in short order. As far as we are concerned, there is no validly or legally declared winner of the election. There is no president-elect. Perish that thought, because processes are being undertaken. So we don't recognize that. I've seen a particular fellow saying that he's president-elect. We don't recognize that at all. And we ask our supporters to stand by and stay calm and stay firm.
Professor Makau Mutua, spokesperson for the Raila Odinga Campaign Secretariat, thank you very much for being with us. It's 9 a.m. Good morning.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Asato. Azimio Moja One Kenya Campaign Secretary spokesperson Makau Mutua now says that the constitution is clear on the formation of the IEBC and how it operates. In an interview with SpiceFM, Mutua says that Chebukati, as the chairperson of the commission, cannot make unilateral decisions without the input of the other commissioners.
Mr. Chebukati does not give himself permission to pronounce on the results of the election. Mr. Chebukati announces the decision of the commission about the outcome of the election. He is a mouthpiece of the commission. He does not decide what to announce.
Which election?
This is a basic distinction. The presidential election. This is a basic distinction. He does not decide what to announce. He announces what is decided by the commission.
He adds that the decisions by the commission must be agreed upon by the majority of the commissioners or by through consensus and not by an individual.
Decisions of the commission, and I'm sure you've read the applicable law, are taken either by consensus or by a majority of the commissioners. It cannot be taken by the chair himself. It cannot be taken by the chair acting with a minority
of the commission.
Of rogue, not just the commission, of rogue commissioners, a minority of rogue commissioners.
Prof, let me ask you a question.
So let me just say this before you get in.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second thing, in the Maina Kiai case, of course, the court was very clear that the chair of the commission is not a dictator. He's just one individual who acts within a corporate body because the IEBC is constituted as a democratic institution.
Yeah.
I want to make this very clear. Otherwise, all the reforms that we've done in this country will be for naught.
It will be remembered that 4 IEBC commissioners walked out of Bomas before the announcement of the presidential results, arguing that the final process was opaque and that they were denied access to critical information. Now, IEBC has yet again postponed the gubernatorial elections in Mombasa and Kakamega counties indefinitely. In a statement, IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati said that this is after the election officials were threatened. Chebukati has also asked the security apparatus to arrest and prosecute those who were involved in the chaos witnessed at the Bomas of Kenya. Elections in Kitui Rural, Kacheliba, Pokot South and Rongai constituencies, Nyaki Ward in Meru County and Kwanjenga in Embakasi East in Nairobi have been affected. The elections were scheduled to take place on Tuesday next week. Elections in the affected areas was postponed due to errors in the ballot paper. Now, the controversy surrounding the 2022 presidential election results have taken a new twist, with the Electoral Commission IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati now stating that the 4 commissioners who disowned the final results wanted to force an election rerun. In a statement, Chebukati dismissed claims by IEBC Vice Chairperson Juliana Cherera, Commissioners Francis Wanderi, Justice Nyangaya and Irene Masit that he denied them access to portal back-end where the final tally was being conducted. Chebukati maintains that the 4 commissioners had access to all results and were involved in all activities of verification and tallying of the presidential election votes, where William Ruto was declared the winner. And religious leaders in the country have expressed concern over what the time is divisions within the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission following Monday's declaration of final presidential results. Speaking in Nairobi, the religious leaders from 9 different denominations warned that the division within the electoral agency threatens the country's peace and stability. To address the differences, the interdenominational community drawn from the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, National Council of Churches of Kenya and Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims said they had commenced efforts to resolve the differences between the commissioners.
We have consistently said that if there is any disagreement in the matter to do with elections in this country, our constitution and our laws have provided channels through which one can pursue their grievances. We already met with the deputy president, who is now president-elect, in terms of engaging with him just to hear his thoughts on how is he going to bring and promote peace and cohesion in our country that is obviously divided 50-50 if the election results are to be understood.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Alseta. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Still extremely busy in the city centre this morning, and we're looking at traffic then. I don't even know where it's going to spill out from now. Later, looking at Enterprise Road, everybody running away from Lunga Lunga, and the drama that happened on Jogo Road earlier, which is not a thing of the past because it's still really busy. It's spilling over then from Jogo Road to Landis Road to Lusaka Road, and Haile Selassie started early, and that is not letting up. Not just yet. The CBD is still thumping with traffic. Coming off a Thika Superhighway, extremely busy, well into Kiambu County this morning and moving really slowly. Where did everybody come from is the question. Kiambu Road, also still really busy right now. Coming out of Westlands, we're looking at a little bit here and there on James Gishoro after the drift. But still a mess. We're likely to be in traffic hour longer than normal hours this morning. Let's talk on SpiceFM KE and keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
It's 7
This
after 9.
is
Good
the
morning and
Situation
welcome to
Room,
the final
the
hour
only
of the
way
show.
to start
this
your
morning.
day.
Now we switch politics to local politics. Kalonzo touted as the next House Speaker. Kalonzo Musyoka and the kind of votes that he rallied around the Ukambani region and for Wiper candidates and the kind of victory that Wiper got in the election. That's what we'll be discussing. We will introduce a guest who joins us. Professor Makao Mutua is still with us for the next 1 hour. But before we introduce them, let's hear the proverb. C.T. Muga speaking pidgin.
C.T. Muga attempting to speak pidgin and faring badly.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Go.
Ting, when E happen for Coco ne E go happen for Kaka.
Okay, now read it fluently.
Ting where E happen for Coco ne E go happen for Kaka. Do, please help.
Thing where happen for Coco, na e go happen for Kaka.
Thank you so much.
Say it again, Ndu.
Thing where happen for Coco, na e go happen for Kaka.
Okay.
Don't ask me to do it.
Yeah.
Let's go around the table.
Let's go around the table. City, what does that mean? What's the translation of that?
The brief summary of the meaning is whatever goes around comes around. Okay, but the lengthy explanation is whatever happens to fresh cocoa beans also happens with fresh beans, other fresh beans as well.
Whatever happens with fresh cocoa beans will also happen with other beans.
Yes, you're talking about drying, you're talking about crushing it. Same thing, talk about coffee beans, same thing will happen. Same process. Yes.
I disassociate myself with your translation or with the interpretation.
Oh,
and
wow.
I go with professor's interpretation.
That what is good for the goose is good
It's
for the
good
gander.
for the gander.
You see, this is the thing. It is now in a room of 5 people, just 2 of you.
Yeah.
I
Plenary,
am the holder
plenary.
of the proverb,
You're
and
the
I
You are
am
the
one.
announcer
yes, and
of
then,
the proverb.
Then, yes, the owner, because I'm the one who announced it. You people didn't know the proverb. before
You
I
even
mentioned
decided
it.
which one it was going to be.
Exactly.
I
It
mean,
is myself.
CT is a Shabukati.
Yes, then there are 2 people who've decided to absent themselves. They're just cheering along and saying, okay, it is good, it is not bad. The
CT for chair of IEBC.
Senator Sylvia Kasanga, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank
you. You know, the period we saw you the last time, 2022 before election. Now, welcome to 2022 after election.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful. Notwithstanding the turn of events, and if you'll allow me just to say, before we delve into our conversation, that it's very disconcerting that there's a section of powerful people in this country who seem to have decided that a certain grouping of Kenyans cannot lead this country. It is also very painful, actually, and I have to say this, because it seems, again, another group of, or the same group of powerful people are really keen not to have a country that is going to be strong on independent systems, that is going to fight corruption with genuineness, that is going to place the interests of Kenyans first, and fight corruption, budgeted corruption, state capture, you name them, all those put together. And a country that is led by a rule of law. And it is really, really painful for a lot of Kenyans when we see this happen. Let me just say that. And I know it is not the conversation now, but I needed to get that out of my heart.
Who are you referring to, Senator?
I don't need to refer to anybody. But right now, the fact that
certain group,
yes, because of the tampering of the election that we have seen now consistently, it is very unfortunate. Why can't we let our systems just, work as independently as they're supposed to do? Why must there be tampering? Whether there was tampering or not is a question that we have left for the courts to decide. But I mean, perception, we saw what happened. Definitely that would not have happened if there was no tampering or some games going on behind them.
If, Senator, I have to ask this question, if your side of the political divide had been declared winners, would you have the same view?
By the time, this one I can say with a lot of confidence that you would not have seen drama around IEBC for us to be declared. You would not have seen that drama. And you'll agree with me, even the way the leaders were all at Bomas. I was not there myself, but we were all following. I was at KICC on that day. You can see there was the confidence that, we expect IEBC to just go ahead and do what they needed to do. But when we saw drama, then we knew something is cooking. Why must there be drama around elections every time?
Why
must people die? Why must there always be something? When will we get to the point where we let our systems do their thing?
Why did the Azimio members start the drama at Bomas?
I think we'll agree that since the investigation is going on and the DCI has taken the footage, we understand now he has the footage. Let's wait and see really what happened. Because that we can only say unless you were up there. We were not up there. We were watching from the cameras. Let's wait and see when the truth comes out. But it really is painful, honestly.
But I can say that in football, for example, and I agree with my sister here, sister in a generic sense, that, in football, for example, when you see a foul being called, it is the person who retaliates who usually gets called for the foul. It is not the original wrongdoer.
The original foulee.
You see, so I mean, it's like the senator said, the investigations are ongoing, and there's footage that we shall be able to see. We had no interest at all as Azimio in disrupting that process. None.
Okay, to the topic of the hour. Senator, all the three governors of Makueni County are for the first time Wiper. Or the three senators of Ukambani are for the first time Wiper. Or the three women rep of Ukambani are for the first time Wiper. Many of the elected members of National Assembly, Wiper. Many of the elected MCAs, Wiper.
I tell you.
You're glowing like
you can see me smile.
They have wiped the floor.
Christmas tree.
I remember having this conversation with you guys some time back. And I remember some of you were not convinced when I told you, wait and see what Kalonzo is going to do. I can't remember when that conversation was.
We did have it. I was one of the dissenters.
Yes, it showed in your eyes, by the way, City.
I asked,
yes.
Are you sure?
Yes,
with political processes, unfortunately, given what we do here for a living, it's not just our job to dissent. It's our job to look at the terrain and what we've seen in the past. And we cannot agree simply because a politician such as yourself has made a pronouncement. No. That is not what we are going to take as the gospel. We will take it as what you have said.
Fair enough.
Now, with the proof staring at us, we will say, yes, you are absolutely right.
You are right.
Sure, we can see the end result, but then we have to claw back and ask, what did he do? Or what does he have then essentially that enabled this kind of result that we see to
And is it Kalonzo or the party?
Was it him?
Well,
alone?
It's first, let's start with the leadership of the party. So it is Kalonzo, because he rallies us together. And he holds a very strong vision for this country. And I hope you do realize it's not just an Ukambani leader. Wiper is a national party. Whereas our performance, of course, was good in Ukambani, I hope you do realize that Wiper is a stronger party today because we have now candidates from Taita Taveta, we have candidates also from Wajir, and we have a women rep.
Indeed.
In Kisii.
You have 20
we
members
have done
of the National
very
Assembly.
well, absolutely. And we are on a growth path. I said this to you guys last time. I said, watch Wiper. Just watch this space. Watch us in the next 5 years, how we are going to move. So we have a clear vision of where we want this country to go. And our leader is the one riding that vision. And for a long time, Kalonzo has been underestimated and vilified. And the governors, the outgoing two governors, that is Kivuda Kibwana and Maendeleo Chap party leader,
Dr.
Alfred Mutua, and also Charity Ngilu, they tried to fight Kalonzo and Wiper in Ukambani region. I mean, that was a big battle for us, without a doubt. because they had the money. You see, now the governors come in with money. But the people of Ukambani, they feel Kalonzo. This is what you must understand. They feel him. They
Why do they
understand
feel
him. Because he's always been genuine. He's always wanted the best for them. And they understand that. He does not have the money to bring those projects, but he's constantly fighting for the betterment of our community. And they understand that. And they feel it. And when he's on the podium speaking to them, you know, when we speak our mother tongue, that's when you'll really understand that he speaks to them, to their hearts.
Can I ask
and
you
they
this
do
question,
understand
Senator?
him. Yeah.
Is it that the people of Ukambani have determined that Kalonzo will be their leader, or is it Kalonzo who has done absolutely well for the people of Ukambani so that they have decided that he is the leader?
It is both. He has done well for them.
You know, then I have to ask how he has done well for them.
You see, for a long time, we always base development with physical, you know, that is the roads. Has he brought a road? Has he brought water and everything? And whereas, yes, Kalonzo has done it on a national level. By the way, we have a lot of national projects that he has been pushing even when he's not in government. And that is no doubt. Yeah. All the big national projects that are happening in our region are courtesy of Kalonzo Musyoka, pushing for them constantly. Those are some of the things we were doing while we are, you know, serving in the, like I was serving in the 12th Parliament as a nominated senator. My work is to follow up on those projects from the various departments, the water projects, you know, the road projects. And this is what people sometimes don't understand, that it is actually Kalonzo working. So if you expect that it is him who will come to build the road, then you're missing the point, because how can he do it when he's not in government? But out of his influence and out of the positions that he has, you know, facilitated for some of us, we make it happen. So he has been serving the people consistently.
So it appears that Kalonzo has wiped the floor. You know, but the question is this always: when you hear that expression, wiping the floor, you know, you don't wipe the floor with nothing. You wipe the floor with somebody or something. So who did he wipe the floor with?
Who's the broom?
Who is
who's the mop?
Who's the mop?
Or who has been mopped?
You wipe because there's dirt on the floor.
Exactly correct. But let me just say this. You know, it's obviously clear that Mr. Musyoka did do very well with his political party, and it's also true that the governors did not do well. That's also a fact. But let us not forget that all three of them, minus Mr. Mutua, or Dr. Mutua, I should say, were part of Azimio. Although Dr. Mutua is still a part of Azimio, he does not know it. But
he's a closeted member.
He still has a couple of days.
No, Chap is a bona fide member of Azimio. It's part of the 26 political parties that constitute Azimio. He never exited the agreement. That's a very laborious process. And the earliest he can exit would be November. He's a member of Azimio. So if Mr. Dr. Mutua has a member in Parliament, I don't know that he does.
Yes,
not checked.
He does.
There is
That's an Azimio member. Whether they like it or not.
And
but
let
me just say this secondarily, that all these individuals, Madam Gilu, Professor Kibwana, and so on, all of them were in Azimio, and they supported us. Of course, Mr. Musyoka was the senior Azimio leader in that region, and he also mobilized our people to vote for Azimio. So it's a wonderful showing for us. I think there are great things ahead for Mr. Musyoka. I've said before, by the way, although Eric is looking at me sideways, or with a side eye rather, that Mr. Musyoka is one of the senior politicians in this country, among the top 4 leaders in this country. That's a fact. But I would like to say that, and I think this is coming in this country, that the era of kingship, kingpins, is going to end very soon. You've seen, Mr. Odinga, for example, is no longer a leader of Luo Nyanza as such. He's a national leader. He is outstripped his sort of ancestry to become a leader of the country, and that's what we wish for everyone. Mr. Musyoka is developing those tentacles, as the senator has expressed. Now he has members.
Has he not developed already?
What?
Those tentacles.
No,
Wiper is a national party. Wiper has had candidates not only in Ukambani but
No. He has, but I'm saying he's consolidating them and extending them.
Okay.
I'm not saying he has not. And personally, I look forward to the day when we don't talk about leaders in this country being pegged or hooked to their ethnic origins, that they are national leaders. That is when we transform ourselves from being an ethnic group to being Kenyans, which is one of the biggest problems that I think we have. And I think the senator was adverting to that when she said that there are particular people in this country who don't want this to happen. They think that the presidency is a birthright of a very few communities and so on. And then you wonder what some communities will have to do to vote to the top leadership. I think that is a challenge of nation building that I've heard CT talk about before here, where we transition from being in our own ethnic cocoons into Kenyans, into Africans, and finally into black people. Because, we have a certain commonality, on the global stage as black people.
How do you juxtapose that, what you're saying, Prof, in terms of people being regional or tribal kingpins, perception-wise, in politics, versus politicians having a base? As a politician, you'll definitely have a base where a majority of people in this region support you as compared to other regions. Now, Kenyans vote on tribal lines, or Kenyans, coalesce on tribal lines. You've even said it here yourself. But so how do you play those two?
Yeah, I mean,
a leader having a solid base, but also having a national outlook, and them not being referred to as the leader of this community.
Yeah, I think ethnic primordialism, or communal primordialism is a very real disease in sort of plural societies like ours, where we have some 40-odd communities. If you remember, Eric, at the dawn of independence, there were several leaders there who voted to the top as national leaders. Surprisingly, Mr. Kenyatta was one of those. He was beloved across the political spectrum and across ethnic communities. Mr. Tom Mboya was another of those people. Mr. Oginga Odinga was another. Even individuals like Pio Gamapinto, did not really have that kind of tag or taint of being an ethnic, leader. If you look at across the south of us here in Tanzania, I challenge you to tell me what ethnic group Julius Nyerere was. You will not be able to say it. Even Magufuli, who came lately, the late Magufuli, many Kenyans don't know what ethnic group he was. Kikwete, most people do not know what group he was. Benjamin Mkapa and others. Tanzania has traveled this road much faster and much further than we have. Our politicians, I think, have held us hostage and beaten us into sacks of potatoes, into ethnic cocoons, what you call tribal cocoons. I don't like the word tribe because tribes apparently only exist in Africa, not in Europe. But but these national communities, I don't call them national community or subnational communities, if you want to say, our leaders did not push that project of nation building, fast enough. I think Mr. Kenyatta had the opportunity to do it, but he did not. I think he retrogressed somewhat. He was a great Pan-Africanist, as you all remember. He was a member of the first Pan-Africanist Congress in Manchester in 1945, with others like W.E.B. Du Bois, and those great men, black men of the planet. But when he came to Kenya, he regressed, And one of the things that I've always liked about my candidate, Mr. Odinga, is that he has always projected this national image. And if you looked at his campaign, the campaign was national in nature. He did not have, and there were no lesser individuals in that campaign. And this has been his life, building one Kenya, one nation. And I hope that is where we go going forward.
You know, what we consider the tribal cocoons, something that you clearly do not like saying, the construct of it and why it has, should we say, acquired the negative tinge that it has, is not because the tribes in and of themselves are anything negative. It's just a descriptive form of a group of people.
Yeah.
And it has always been. Now, whether you call, let's say, bankers, it's a tribe of bankers if you want to call them that. If you want to look at educators, it's a tribe. Now, in the West, they most definitely are tribal even in their political configurations. If you look at the history of these so-called parties and how it is people galvanize around them, believe me, it was not just ethnic lines, but there was a commonality. Now, what am I saying? I am saying that sometimes when we look at our own political configuration, we are our best worst enemies in that we agree with what the Western world classifies as us, instead of distinctly being proud of what we are and how it is we go about our business. You've correctly said that we have over time learned to coalesce. Yes, somebody may be a leader in one region, but they will work with other people. But why it is easy is if you look at this country, members of the Kenyan community live everywhere and anywhere. Others who are more numerous live perhaps elsewhere and everywhere more than others. But they do. So even when we talk about our political parties and the affiliations, it's a preference that one can assume. Talk about the UK. They have a Labour Party. Where is the strength of the Labour Party? In places where there was industrialization and there were workers. Look at the formation of what we call the Whig Party. I'm saying this because I find absolutely nothing wrong with somebody being a leader of a community in a place. Mm-hmm. In fact, it is a good thing. Mm-hmm. The point that we should arrive at is that person having been a leader, it means that there are certain aspirations that community have that this person represents. That's why the person continues being a leader. Mm. And in our setup, it is very difficult for you to be considered and accepted as a leader elsewhere if your own community doesn't consider you to be a leader.
Because Absolutely. You come from somewhere.
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, yes. I really want to agree with you on that. There's nothing wrong with being a leader of your community. And as we become more politically aware as a nation, and we are seeing that now happening, if you don't perform for the people, they get rid of you. So if they consistently, choose you as their leader, it means you're doing something right, something they appreciate. They feel that their needs are represented by that particular leader. And I think, just to comment on what Professor was saying, whereas, Kenyans are waking up to the idea of the nationalism of leadership, I still think we have a bit of way to go. We have a bit of way to go. We will still need the base. Any leader will still need to have his base strong enough before he can now reach out to the rest of the country to seek leadership. And that we are going to see, I think, for the next 2 or 3 elections before we get over that. And then something also we've discussed here, or probably in another platform, the fact that our boundaries, our county boundaries were placed around our tribes, which I think is something that should have been thought through at the time of placing the boundaries, such that you will find largely the community of the area is the one that takes leadership, including even in the county assembly. Until the day we will have the county assemblies mixed up, or you will have a governor who comes from Kisii and can lead in Ukambani, we still have some way to go. We still have to rely on, our strong basis.
Let me just say this, these counties largely track the 42 colonial districts.
Yes,
that were there at independence. So they are basically remnants, if you will, residues of the colonial period, which have sort of calcified ethnic consciousness in this country and prevented the development of a national consciousness. Let me just say that the guiding principle of the 2010 Constitution and which is premised on liberal theory itself, is that individuals are granted rights as persons, not as members of an ethnic group in that sense. The Constitution, our Constitution does not envisage that we are organized as members of ethnic groups. It envisages that we are individuals with free will to govern ourselves and to make decisions in that sense. That is really the magic of liberalism, if you take it at a higher level. And the march of that project of democracy is to shear us or to shear off, toxic identities. And I'm not saying that ethnicity is a toxic identity per se, but I'm saying that politicians toxify ethnicity and use us as common people to fight each other, to tell us, I'm going to bargain for you for the national cake, when in fact they are bargaining for themselves. This process is not organic. And so if you know how corrupt our society is, no one is... ethnic kingpins in this country are really creatures that ought to be questioned seriously.
Take a break. Let's take a break. 27 minutes to 10. Senator, you'll come back with a well. That's where we'll start from. Let's take a break first and take a look at the weather and traffic. Senator Sylvia Kasanga and Professor Makao Mutua are here with us. We are talking about the rise and rise of Kalonzo Musyoka and also looking at, Wiper has governors, has senators, has women rep, has members of the National Assembly, 20 members of the National Assembly. That's a good thing.
Actually, they're 23.
23?
Yeah, they're 23.
Yes, I was just looking at those elected directly as Wiper Democratic, 20, and then from the women reps, 4. They're 23.
I'm sticking up for Wiper. 23.
Very good. Yeah, because you're looking at the bigger picture. How many does Azimio have?
Exactly.
Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person. Hustler is a person who is making his a living through hard work.
The group of leaders we are having now, Kenyans, listen, the chemical composition is the same. You will mold them to ODM, then NASA, you mold them to Kanu, mold them to Jubilee, mold them to any other different color sometimes, but the chemical composition is the same.
It's not about me as Nurdin Haji, but it's about the constitution that I swore to protect. So when individuals attempt to hoard those powers and they want to be investigators and also prosecutors, then of course I have to defend that position because that position is in the constitution and that's what Kenyans wanted.
I'll tell you what happens is that when you ignore court orders, you're creating and quoting anarchy. Then you create a very dangerous precedent.
A story is told of the first president of the country who also went to visit Mathare, presidential tour. And of course, he went to this place and he introduced himself. So one of the enemies says, hata wewe kuna jina kama yangu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Sunny conditions in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 24. Highs of 24 in a mostly cloudy Nakuru, and it's cloudy at 16 in Nyeri. Highs of 22 and lows of 9. Cloudy at 16 in Eldoret. Highs of 21 and lows of 12. And it's raining in Mombasa at 25. It'll go to highs of 28 today. We'll also see highs of 28 in a rainy Malindi. 22 and rain in Kisumu, and 22 and cloudy in Kakamega. In Kampala, the rain keeps coming. We'll see highs of 24. 29 will be the high in a sunny Dar es Salaam. And it's 17 degrees, much warmer in Johannesburg. Highs of 23, 29 will be the high in a cloudy Lagos, and 31 will be the high in a cloudy Kinshasa. Currently at 22, let's look out into Beijing, where afternoon brings rain and temperatures of 23, and cloudy conditions at 18 in Paris. It's also 18 and raining in London. It's 20 and clear in New York. Coming into Thursday, we'll see highs of 30 and lows of 20. Busy as a beehive in the middle of the city this morning, and we're seeing traffic still spilling over from Jogo Road out onto Landis and onto Kamkunji, in and outbound traffic. On Haile Selassie today, that continues, and we're also looking at the CBD, still pretty busy. It's not letting up on the Thika Superhighway, just past that survey, and then out towards Arutali Drift, very heavy traffic. It's looking a lot better on Kiambu Road, a little bit here and there on Limuru Road, but in the middle is where you see most of it today. Not quite sure what caused that, but we'll be out of traffic hour in a short while and hopefully get on with the day. Talk to us through the morning about what's going on where you are. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, we continue the conversation. 22 minutes to 10.
Mornings done right. 94
in the studio. We said, Senator, that you will begin from the point.
Well,
go on.
Well, Professor here has no choice but to, speak for Wiper whenever he can, because Wiper performed very well. As a big partner of Azimio. In fact, there's a meme that shows Kalonzo carrying Wiper on his shoulders. Carrying Azimio on his shoulders. And it's a very good picture,
I will not argue with that.
It's a good picture.
Why would that be called so? It's not like Wiper has the majority of the contributions into the Azimio pot. The one with the majority would be ODM, 70 members of the constituency, single member Denise, and then 10 women rep.
It's because
80 compared to?
Yeah, it's because there was the fact that a lot of people underestimated Kalonzo's capacity and what he can bring. And in fact, just to say something that Professor had talked about just a little earlier, if you remember how vilified Kalonzo was, especially by the governors, just before he had joined, or that we had officially joined Azimio. And there was talks of Kalonzo has been given money. I think the figure was 3 billion, and things like that. All sorts of things were said about Kalonzo to make him look,
So
to belittle him.
It wasn't 3 billion.
Lati, you have to be very careful right now with the things you say on national, because who has proved that? And if at all, the community...
It's an allegation.
It was an allegation. And, they try to make it look like Kalonzo goes out there, to just fight for his own personal interest, something he was saying about these so-called kingpin leaders who just go for their own personal interest. But what has happened today is we've debunked that entire myth. And it is clear the people of Ukambani and Kambas, wherever they are, believe that and know. I told you they feel Kalonzo. They know he's fighting for their community and not for himself. And if at all he was fighting for himself, you would see him different. You'd see different fortunes. You'd be asking, where did those, say, choppers come from and things like that. You've never seen Kalonzo do that. And you see, this is the reason why when you underestimate people, although let me not even go into that. We are just happy with the performance of Kalonzo. And something else that Kenyans need to know. He's a global leader because he's been the one who goes, around mediating, all that, yeah? And that plays also into the local setting. Kalonzo is a serious mediator. And because of that, he's been able to retain a lot of relationships, keep the party together. So we don't see fallouts and things like that affect the performance of the party in the long run. And he's been able to contain, even in this heated, election. You saw how he handled Wavinya Ndeti and the MP for Mavoko, Macau, Mheshimiwa Macau. You saw that. It was heavily contested. He was able to balance it out. And many others. We did that a lot in the region to maintain and keep the party together so that we can continue growing the party.
Of course, the way in which you talk about this, given, how does this feed then into the national conversation? Because in as much as we understand that it's absolutely necessary for you to have, your background support. They say if you can't sort things out in the kitchen, don't even come out into the courtyard, because what are you doing, right? But how does this then feed into the national conversation where we're saying, because you've done so well in representation of your people at home, does it then translate to then you being able to do this on a national level?
Absolutely. Actually, the same strengths you're seeing being carried through at the local level are the same ones that will be carried on a national level. And like I said, let's, watch this space. 2027. Watch the space. Kalonzo is coming, Wiper is growing. We shall be using the same, strengths as we continue growing the party, as we continue getting membership across the country and fielding more candidates across the country, a lot more than we did this year. We fielded quite a number this year. Fine, they lost. A lot of it is because, again, we have the sibling rivalry within Azimio that, has cost us in several pockets. But we are still able to emerge in some of the pockets. But going forward, we are growing stronger. And these negotiations are happening and will continue happening even at the national, at the national platform. And, I like to remind Kenyans that Kalonzo is one of the most inclusive leaders that you will get. And this is something that will play out at a national level. Even when you see the composition of our party is not an Ukambani party. It's a national party. Mm-hmm. Our Secretary General is from Lamu. She got the first nominee slot for Senate. She's going into Senate. You see, that is the kind of national outlook that Kalonzo has all the time. And he pushes for it and insists on it, even at the party level. So we're just expanding ourselves now.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
as we go forward.
Are we then feeding into this long age narrative of the political party then coalescing around an individual as opposed to issues?
No, it's still about issues. Yes, I know we still have the individual, yes, because the vision bearer and all that. But even the way we have formed the party, you can see it's a party that is here to stay beyond any individual. We have a new constitution as a party. I think I mentioned this before. We have a new constitution that believes very largely on social democracy. And each of our leaders taps into that as they go out into their leadership spheres, you see. So we are building a national party. It is a national party. And it will be built beyond an individual. In as much as right now, the vision bearer, like any institution, you need a vision bearer first. And then you have the structures then that can live beyond.
So
that is the same thing.
What we are seeing right now, if Kalonzo was not there, would we see the same build-up of structures for the party? Or is it then heavily dependent on the character of Kalonzo Musyoka?
It's not easy to say if he was not there because he's there. He's there right now. So I don't know if I can envision
because
him
not there. Because if it was really then built on issues,
it is
then
built
it wouldn't
on issues.
matter who the person at the top was beyond now delivering the vision on those issues. I'm just, in terms of longevity, because we're talking about a national party, then should be able to live out. Yeah. And that's just really where I am now in terms of, okay, I mean, everything that you say, and it is fantastic to hear that looking at a party that, is basically built from the ground. But then we say, in terms of longevity, will it go beyond the individual? That a child who is in primary school today can join this party in the future and say, I'm going to be able to come and fill in.
It's about strong structures. You see, strong structures, the same thing we keep saying about our country. It is the structures that keep an institution running beyond an individual. And at any one time, the individual at the top has the duty to make sure the systems and, all the cogs are turning at the time when they are there.
Yeah, I think that, if, we are talking about what is, and we should also talk about what ought
to be.
CT, momentarily here bought the idea of a kingpin, but I want to disabuse him of this idea. That if you look, our democracy is a fledgling one. It's a young democracy. We still live in a largely illiberal state, not fully liberal, a liberal state, which means that our people and our leaders have not internalized the tenets of democracy. Fascism still runs deep in the society. This ethnic bigotry is with us to the bone marrow. These cabals form around ethnic groups and so on, and ethnic leaders. At some point, we ought to be able to start to separate leadership from their ethnic communities. That's when we would know that our democracy is maturing. In advanced democracies, for example, you don't see people holding onto their communities. The one exception was, of course, Trump holding onto white people explicitly as his group to propel him into office.
Professor.
And let me finish. Let me just finish this point because I know what you want to say. I know what you want to say. But, I'm just saying that this appeal to an ethnic group directly and without shame is not something that you see in liberal societies. You see there may be coded language and so on and so forth. And when you pass from office, let us say, for example, Clinton passes from office or Obama passes from office, he still cannot control what that community is going to do. It's very difficult to do it. In this country, whether you are in office or out of office, you, for lack of a better word, you colonize your community and you hold them hostage. And I think what, and I said, I think you would agree with me, what we would like to be, okay, it's okay to have that base, all right? But at least to go beyond that base, to be what we ought to be, not what we are. To dream of a higher planet, of a higher summit for ourselves as a people, to engage in a conversation about, a superior intelligence, about national politics, which does not moor us just to the community that we come from. It moors us into the nation of Kenya because, we were not created as one country, by the British. We were beaten together. Into this thing called Kenya. And so we must struggle to make it a country and a nation and a state that works for us.
Before Garibaldi came into being and did what he did to unify Italy, it was a smattering and a scattering of small states.
True.
If Otto von Bismarck, and the story goes on. If you look at and listen to what you're saying the strong leadership that we see in communities where they stand out and they clearly are the leading lights of whatever movement or party that they have should then be subject to a committee. Because if you look at political parties in the West, those parties have owners. The presidential candidate is someone they feel they ought to push up the ladder so that they can lead and become whoever they are. But the structure of the party has a leadership. The structure of those parties have people who actually call the shots. And it is known, and that is what they do. So it isn't as though we're that different. It's just that we are at that phase where we are still enjoying the process of having an understanding of how leadership works. It's a process. And if I'm to go by the example of the West, we've moved very swiftly. Really, really swiftly.
You're making lips.
I think you're being polite. But, no, I think you're being polite. I think that, the aspirations of our Constitution seeks to create a Kenyan. That is a basic aspiration of that document, is to create a Kenyan. One who is driven by values and interests and principles, not fundamentally by their ethnicity. To me, I regard ethnicity, the way it is used in Kenyan politics, as a malignant force, as a totally malignant force. I mean, that's why we went to war in 2007. That's why, Senator here was talking about certain people deciding that others should not lead, and others feeling that it's their birthright. I talked here before last time I was here about communities of entitlement and incumbency who feel that they must lead and others must be led in this country. And you know what I'm talking about. And that is what we want to vanquish. I would say that. And this is why we actually think that, one of the benefits of a Raila presidency will be the demystification of this diarchy of two groups, sort of husbanding, if you will, the presidency since independence. It'll be great. And it will open the door for others, like Mr. Musyoka and others, to come into the presidency. That is why this election means so much to all of us as a country, so that we can mature as a country. See what they did in South Africa? After Mbeki and Mandela, who are Xhosas, you have not seen another Xhosa, take the baton. You've seen others come into the picture to complete the national project. You've seen in Tanzania, which I talked about earlier, You don't see people coming from the same group time and again, because that is not how you build an African nation, for God's sake.
Glad you mentioned Tanzania, because their model is very much like a Western model, if I leave the Chinese Communist Party aside. But they have a hierarchy, they have a system, they even have institutions that build up leaders. So you more or less have an idea of who's going to be the leader next.
Yes.
Now, that's a cartel.
What? The leadership?
What, the leadership?
Yes, it's a cartel, because the moment...
CT, I part company there. I part company with you there.
I think if I'm just to add on to what Professor is saying, to agree with him to a good extent, is that our politics, there's been the conversation about exclusion, the feeling excluded. They're feeling excluded from sharing of the national cake, for instance. And that we really need to relook at our leadership model, our governance model, so that no one feels excluded. Was it yesterday you were talking about a parliamentary system? Was it yesterday? I don't know. It was yesterday. And I said that is what this country really, really needs. Let the leader of government be chosen from Parliament for once. Let us not be the ones to go to the ballot for that. Let it be decided there in Parliament. Let the post-election coalitions, happen there as they try to muzzle out and fight. We've given them the mandate anyway. Let them go and sort it out there. And in the process of that, you find a better sharing of, national cake, national goodies, rather than having to rely on one individual, which is what we have seen since independence. And until the time we are going to resolve some of these issues, the question of even that national, the kind of, country that we envision and that we want, which is a country where a Kenyan is a Kenyan beyond, their tribe, is not going to happen until that inclusion bit of it has been felt by everybody.
Sure, but are we looking at processes that are not going to be comfortable to get to the desired end? And if we're going to make them, if we're going to make the comparison to countries who are there today, they went through some really back-breaking, difficult situations to get there. There was blood that was shed. There was revolt that was happening before they got to the point where they said one of two things: never again will we go back there, and these are the things that we need to do in order to get there. And there was a collective agreement when it came across board and said, look, okay, we've been through the rigors and the ringers, and we've seen, okay, this we cannot do again. This we cannot do again. But then many would argue that until you get through that grinding and gnashing of teeth, then you may not get to that point. And I think it's important to have those conversations and to say, can we get to the point whereby we have an agreement as to what can never happen again? There are things that we can accept and say moving forward, governance should be in this manner. But then getting to the point across board collectively and say, these things we have consensus can never happen again. It doesn't matter what corner of the country you're from. Can we not get to that point?
There's this notion of, I don't know whether I've talked about this before on this show, there's this notion of state and national irreversibility, whereby you cohere into a nation, and you develop a national consciousness, a kind of a zeitgeist,
right,
that says that I am a Kenyan.
First.
First, I'm a Kenyan.
Yep.
And then I'm everything else second. I'm a woman, I'm a man, I am a Kikuyu, I'm a Kamba, I'm whatever else I am. I live in Central, I live wherever. That is the point of irreversibility. And I think what you are saying is very apt. If you look at countries that have reached that level of irreversibility, where the state cannot simply be unraveled and dismantled, they have gone through some traumatic things. The United States, for example, was civil war. Okay, that really bonded them. South Africa, I would like to say, it's a long struggle against apartheid that created this national thing that they are going through. It's a project, I agree. But they are further along even than we are. For Tanzania, it was really the brain power of one man. People say, individuals cannot make history. They can. They do. Nyeri actually single-handedly willed that country into what it is today, into a nation of people. So that if you go to Tanzania, for example, I lived there, and I think I said this before here. I was there for 3 years in exile. Never once was I asked what my tribe was. As long as you spoke Swahili, people would assume that you are just one of them.
Okay.
Wewe ulikuwa ni mwenyeji tu kama unaongea Kiswahili. So That is very important, and I like to think of that country as really the country to the south of us as a model. I know Kenyans don't like to think that there are other models, but that one is a model for us.
Yeah, there's something to learn from other people, and there's nothing wrong with looking out there to see where we should then go, so absolutely.
I think we are on that journey that Ndu you're talking about. Yeah, a journey where we say some things never again. After 2007, there have been some things never again, with the conversations about what makes us fight, what is it that cannot be said by a public leader, we are saying never again. With the conversations about corruption and how we define corruption, I think we're in that phase now. What is corruption? What can we say never again?
And also, not to cut your tongue, but the attempt that the Building Bridges initiative had is a phrase to try and cut into somebody's conversation. What the Building Bridges initiative was attempting to do is some of the things we are talking about here. Whereas, yes, it was stopped by the courts and everyone else. The fact does remain there's an attempt that we are trying to get this country to where we feel it needs to be, so that we don't have these questions of not being included, and we can move towards a country where everyone is a Kenyan first. So again, I hope these conversations don't die out. It looks like we have to continue fighting. We still need those leaders who will put themselves out there, bring out these ideas and fight for them.
Yeah, and follow due process.
And follow due process, absolutely. The rule of law must prevail.
Prof, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think the Supreme Court pronounced itself, the BBI. We are obedient citizens of this country. We will follow the law and what the court says. The next time it is done, it will be done according to the black letter of the law.
Very good. We want to thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Before you
final comment.
Okay. I think I want more time. Hopefully there's a conversation we've not had. There's a mental health conversation you need to have. We need to have that because, you've had several, and I appreciate what you've had. But nobody has spoken about the 12th Parliament having given Kenyans an Act of Parliament to do with mental health, a legislative framework in which mental health can be discussed. So I need us to have that conversation. And secondly, I have brought you guys a book so that we can start internalizing this leader of ours who has done
all odds.
Very well.
Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka.
Against all odds.
With Caleb Atemi.
Absolutely. I think Kenyans, we need to interact with the history of Kalonzo Musyoka so that you can understand him deeper, so that we stop undermining him or underestimating him.
This man
and
first.
Watch out that he's your next big thing.
I'll talk about the mental health. I like that very much.
We'll talk about it. Time is up. Thank you very much for joining us, Senator Sylvia Kasanga and Professor Makau Mutua. Have a lovely day, folks. We'll see you again tomorrow. It's 10 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya campaign secretariat spokesperson Professor Makau Mutua now says that the constitution is clear on the formation of the IEBC and